Have you ever been in a situation where someone disrespected you, played mind games, or tried to get under your skin, just to see how you'd react? Maybe they pushed your buttons, waiting for you to explode, defend yourself, or prove something. But what if I told you that your greatest power isn't in fighting back? It's in doing nothing at all. Yes, nothing. No long texts explaining yourself. No heated arguments trying to be heard. No emotional outbursts to show them how much they hurt you. Just silence. Cold, calm, undeniable silence. You see, reacting is exactly what they want. It feeds their ego. It gives them control. But cutting them off silently, that's the move they never expect. It's the power play that leaves them confused, frustrated, and questioning their own worth, while you walk away untouched, unbothered, and completely in control. This isn't about being petty. It's about reclaiming your energy. It's about understanding that not everyone deserves a front row seat to your life. Some people only stick around to drain you, to provoke you, to keep you in emotional chaos. And the best revenge isn't shouting louder. It's living better, with your peace intact and your silence speaking louder than words ever could. In this guide, you're going to learn the art of non-reaction, the ultimate Stoic power move. You'll discover how to protect your inner peace without the drama, how to set boundaries without saying a word, and how to walk away from anything or anyone without guilt. By the time you're done reading, you won't just know how to cut people off silently. You'll understand why it's the smartest, most liberating decision you'll ever make. Now that you understand the weight of silence, the kind that doesn't seek attention but commands it effortlessly, it's time to peel back the layers of this quiet strength. Silence isn't just the absence of words, it's the presence of power. It's the space where control lives, where clarity is born, and where you hold every card without even laying them on the table. This isn't about shutting people out with bitterness. It's about standing so firmly in your own peace that chaos can't reach you. Let's step into the heart of it. The Stoic power of silence, how non-reaction reflects true inner strength. Silence is often misunderstood. People assume that not speaking up means weakness, that it's a sign of submission. But the truth is, silence requires more strength than shouting ever will. It takes discipline to hold back when every part of you wants to react. It takes self-mastery to resist the urge to defend, explain, or justify. In fact, the people who feel the need to always respond, always prove, are often the ones least in control of themselves. The loudest person in the room is rarely the strongest. The one who doesn't flinch, doesn't argue, doesn't engage in pointless battles. That's where real power resides. Think about the energy it takes to react, the emotional exhaustion after a heated argument, the restless nights replaying conversations in your head, thinking about what you should have said. All of that is a drain, a leakage of your mental, emotional, and even physical energy. But when you choose silence, when you decide that not every situation deserves your reaction, you conserve that energy. You keep it where it belongs, with you. Silence, in its purest form, is control, not over others, but over yourself. It's the ability to pause, to observe, to let emotions rise and fall without being swept away by them. In that space between stimulus and response lies your freedom. The freedom to decide what truly deserves your attention and what is just noise trying to pull you away from your peace. When you don't react, you leave others to sit with their own behavior. You create a mirror without distortion, reflecting their actions back at them with crystal clarity. There's no defense, no distraction, just the raw reality of their choices. People aren't used to that. They expect pushback, confrontation, or emotional explosions. But silence? Silence forces them to face themselves, and that's more uncomfortable than any argument. In relationships, this is especially powerful. When someone disrespects you, betrays you, or tries to manipulate you, the instinct is often to fight back, to demand an explanation, to make them see how they've hurt you. But here's the thing, they already know. They don't need your words to understand the impact of their actions. What they aren't prepared for is your absence, your indifference, your refusal to engage. That's what lingers long after the moment has passed. That's what echoes in the silence. Silence also protects your dignity. Words spoken in anger often come with regret. We say things we don't mean, or worse, we say things that give others power over us. But when you respond with silence, you maintain your composure. You don't lower yourself to someone else's level. You rise above it. You stay grounded in your values, unshaken by temporary emotions. This doesn't mean suppressing your feelings. It means choosing the right outlet for them. Not every feeling needs to be verbalized. Not every thought deserves an audience. Sometimes, processing in silence, reflecting in solitude, is the most healing thing you can do. It allows you to understand your emotions without them being manipulated or misunderstood by others. There's also a strategic element to silence. In situations where conflict is unavoidable, whether it's in personal relationships, the workplace, or even public spaces, non-reaction can be a tactical advantage. It disarms people who thrive on chaos. It removes the fuel from the fire. When someone tries to provoke you and you don't give them the reaction they're seeking, their power over you evaporates. They're left grappling with their own frustration while you remain untouched. Think of silence as armor, not the kind that makes you cold or detached, but the kind that shields you from unnecessary harm. It's the space where you can hear your own thoughts clearly, where you can decide what matters and what doesn't. It's where you regain your strength, piece by piece, breath by breath. In moments of crisis, silence is often the calm before the breakthrough. It's the pause that allows you to see the bigger picture, to make decisions based on wisdom rather than impulse. It's what keeps leaders composed in the face of adversity, what helps negotiators maintain an upper hand, and what gives individuals the resilience to withstand life's storms without falling apart. But here's the beautiful paradox. While silence feels passive, it's incredibly active. It's a choice, a deliberate act of strength. Choosing not to react isn't the absence of a decision. It is the decision. It's deciding that your peace matters more than winning an argument, that your energy is too valuable to waste on things that don't deserve it, that your self-respect isn't up for debate. Silence also invites growth. When you're not constantly reacting to the world, you create space for reflection. You start to notice patterns, how certain situations trigger you, how certain people drain you, how your own mind can be your worst enemy if left unchecked. In that awareness, there's power. You learn to respond rather than react, to act with intention rather than impulse. And let's not forget the ripple effect. When you embody the Stoic power of silence, you inspire others. Your calm becomes contagious. People notice when someone can walk through chaos without being pulled into it. They admire the quiet confidence that comes from within, not from external validation. You become a lighthouse, not because you're shouting instructions at lost ships, but because you're simply standing strong, shining your light without saying a word. So, the next time you're tempted to react, to defend, to argue, to prove. Pause. Feel the power in that pause. Let the silence speak for you, because often it says everything that needs to be said. Silence isn't just golden. It's invincible. It's the echo of strength, the shadow of wisdom, and the voice of the unbothered. And when you master it, you'll find that the world has far less control over you than you ever thought possible. While silence holds immense power, it's not just about what you withhold. It's about when you choose to withhold it. Silence without control is just quiet. But silence with discipline, that's where mastery begins. It's not enough to simply stay silent. The true art lies in knowing when your voice adds value and when it merely feeds the noise. This leads us to the heart of it all, mastering emotional discipline, the Stoic art of choosing when not to respond. Emotional discipline isn't about being cold or indifferent. It's about having such deep control over your emotions that they don't control you. It's the ability to stand in the heat of provocation, disappointment, or even betrayal, and not let it shake the foundation of who you are. It's the difference between reacting and responding. A reaction is impulsive, driven by the immediate surge of emotion. A response, however, is thoughtful, deliberate, and anchored in self-awareness. Think about how often people regret words spoken in anger. In moments of frustration, it feels satisfying to lash out, to win the argument, to make someone feel what you're feeling. But that satisfaction is fleeting. What lingers is the damage done, the words that can't be unsaid, the respect that quietly slips away, the self-control that was lost in the heat of the moment. Emotional discipline is the invisible pause that prevents those regrets. It's the mental space you create between stimulus and response, where clarity resides. At its core, emotional discipline is about ownership, owning your feelings without letting them own you. The world will throw countless triggers your way: insults, rejection, unfairness, even betrayal. You can't control that, but you can control how much space those triggers occupy in your mind. You can decide whether they deserve your attention, your energy, or your peace. And most of the time, they don't. People often mistake reacting for strength. They think raising your voice, clapping back, or asserting dominance proves power. But real power doesn't need to announce itself. It's felt. It's in the steady heartbeat when others expect you to unravel. It's in the calm expression when someone tries to provoke you. That's not weakness. That's a level of control most people will never reach, because it requires facing the hardest opponent, your own ego. Ego is often the biggest barrier to emotional discipline. It whispers, "Don't let them get away with that. You need to defend yourself," or "Show them they can't treat you like that." But what if the true strength lies in not needing to prove anything at all? What if the real flex is walking away with your dignity intact, while the other person is left grappling with the emptiness of their attempt to disturb your peace? Mastering emotional discipline isn't about suppression. It's not about pretending you don't care when you do. It's about processing your emotions internally, understanding them, and deciding whether they deserve an external reaction. There's a difference between feeling anger and being controlled by it. One acknowledges the emotion, the other surrenders to it. Stoics believed in observing emotions like clouds passing in the sky, acknowledging their presence without attaching to them. They didn't aim to feel nothing. They aimed to understand what they felt and why. This awareness creates a buffer, a protective space where you can evaluate, is this worth my energy? Does responding serve my growth, or does it simply satisfy a fleeting impulse? One of the most liberating aspects of emotional discipline is realizing that not every battle is yours to fight. Not every comment deserves a reply. Not every slight requires correction. In fact, the need to constantly correct others, to have the last word, to prove a point, that's often a sign of insecurity, not strength. When you're secure in yourself, you don't need external validation to feel right. You know who you are, and that knowledge speaks louder than any argument ever could. Consider how much peace you gain when you detach from the need to control how others perceive you. Someone thinks you're wrong? Let them. Someone disrespects you. They've revealed more about themselves than they have brought you. Emotional discipline isn't about controlling others. It's about controlling your inner landscape so that external events don't dictate your emotional climate. Another crucial element of emotional discipline is patience. Not the passive kind where you simply endure, but the active kind that chooses restraint as an act of power. When provoked, the immediate reaction might be anger or defensiveness. But if you pause just for a moment, you'll often find that the situation doesn't deserve the emotional energy you were about to give it. That pause is everything. It's where wisdom steps in, reminding you that time often reveals more than any hasty words ever could. In conflicts, the person who remains calm holds the advantage. Emotional outbursts cloud judgment. They make you vulnerable because you're acting from a place of imbalance. But when you maintain your composure, you think clearly, you see the situation for what it is, and most importantly, you remain true to yourself. You don't let someone else's chaos pull you into their storm. Detachment plays a significant role here. Detachment doesn't mean indifference. It means you can engage with life fully without being enslaved by the outcomes. You care, but you don't cling. You feel, but you don't drown. This mindset allows you to navigate challenges with grace, because your peace isn't tied to external validation or circumstances. You're anchored within, not tossed around by the waves of other people's opinions or actions. Emotional discipline also teaches you the value of selective silence. Silence isn't just the absence of noise, it's a statement. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all, not out of spite, but because the situation doesn't deserve your voice. This is particularly effective when dealing with manipulative people who thrive on provoking reactions. When you don't give them what they want, your emotional energy, they lose their grip. Your silence becomes a mirror, forcing them to confront their own behavior without the distraction of your reaction. But emotional discipline isn't just about handling conflict. It's also about managing your inner world. It's about not letting anxiety spiral, not feeding negative thought patterns, not reacting to every fear or doubt that crosses your mind. It's the ability to sit with discomfort without letting it define you, to observe your thoughts without believing every one of them. This internal stillness is what Stoics referred to as ataraxia, a state of serene calmness, undisturbed by external circumstances. Developing this level of discipline requires practice. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. You'll slip up, you'll react when you wish you hadn't, and that's okay. What matters is the awareness you bring to those moments. Every time you catch yourself before reacting impulsively, you strengthen that mental muscle. Over time, it becomes second nature, not because you've suppressed your emotions, but because you've learned to master them. One powerful technique is reframing. When faced with a trigger, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" shift to, What is this teaching me? This subtle change transforms you from a passive recipient of life's challenges to an active participant in your growth. Every difficult person, every frustrating situation becomes a lesson in emotional resilience. And let's not forget self-compassion. Emotional discipline isn't about harsh self-criticism. It's about balance. It's okay to feel deeply. It's okay to be affected. What matters is what you do with those feelings. Do you let them control you, or do you use them as fuel for growth? Being gentle with yourself in this process is part of the discipline. You're not aiming to be emotionless. You're aiming to be emotionally wise. In the end, mastering emotional discipline is less about controlling the outside world and more about cultivating inner peace. It's realizing that true freedom isn't the absence of triggers, but the absence of unnecessary reactions. It's the quiet confidence of knowing that no matter what life throws at you, you have the strength to choose your response, or not to respond at all. And in that choice lies your power. Mastering emotional discipline is like forging armor for the mind. But what good is armor if you leave the gates wide open? It's one thing to control your reactions. It's another to protect your peace from constant attacks. Emotional discipline helps you stay calm in the storm, but sometimes the real strength lies in deciding not to stand in the storm at all. This brings us to the next crucial step: guarding your inner citadel, cutting off toxic influences without drama. Your inner citadel is the core of who you are, your peace, your values, your sense of self. It's the part of you that the world shouldn't be able to shake, no matter what happens outside. But here's the hard truth. The people and situations you allow into your life are either fortifying that citadel or weakening its walls. Every conversation, every relationship, every habit is either an ally or an invader. The challenge isn't just to spot the invaders, but to remove them without turning it into a war. Cutting off toxic influences isn't about revenge or proving a point. It's about survival. It's about reclaiming your energy from people who drain it, from environments that suffocate your growth, and from cycles that pull you into negativity. The key is to do it with clarity, not chaos. You don't need to announce your boundaries with fanfare. You don't owe lengthy explanations. The quiet, steady withdrawal of your presence speaks volumes. The first step is recognizing what toxicity looks like. It's not always loud or obvious. Sometimes it's disguised as constant criticism masked as honesty. Sometimes it's a friend who only shows up when they need something, leaving you feeling used. It could be the subtle manipulations that make you question your worth, or the endless drama that leaves you emotionally exhausted. Toxicity isn't just about bad behavior. It's about how that behavior affects your mental and emotional well-being. Once you've identified these influences, the next step is to detach without guilt. This is where many people struggle. We're conditioned to believe that we owe others endless chances, that cutting someone off is harsh or heartless. But consider this. If someone was physically harming you, would you hesitate to protect yourself? Emotional harm is no different. Just because you can't see the bruises doesn't mean they aren't there. Protecting your peace is an act of self-respect, not cruelty. Detachment doesn't require conflict. You don't need dramatic confrontations to prove your point. In fact, engaging in unnecessary drama only ties you closer to the very thing you're trying to escape. True detachment is quiet. It's not about slamming doors. It's about not walking through them anymore. It's choosing not to reply, not to engage, not to be available for the same patterns that once drained you. This doesn't mean avoidance, it means clarity. Avoidance is fear-based, it's running away from discomfort. Detachment is strength-based, it's choosing what aligns with your peace and walking away from what doesn't. Sometimes that means having a calm, honest conversation. Other times, it simply means stepping back without fanfare, letting distance speak for itself. An important part of guarding your inner citadel is understanding that not everyone deserves access to you. Your time, your energy, your attention, these are valuable currencies. Spend them wisely. You don't have to explain why you're setting boundaries. No is a complete sentence. Silence is a complete response. The need to over-explain often comes from seeking validation, but you don't need anyone's approval to protect your peace. Cutting off toxic influences isn't just about people. It's also about habits, environments, and even your own thoughts. What media are you consuming daily? Does it uplift you or feed negativity? What routines do you have that drain your energy? Sometimes the most toxic influence is the narrative you've been telling yourself, the belief that you're not enough, that you have to tolerate mistreatment to be liked, or that setting boundaries makes you selfish. Rewiring these internal narratives is part of the process. When you let go of what doesn't serve you, you make room for what does. Growth doesn't happen in cluttered spaces, whether that's your mind, your relationships, or your daily life. Cutting ties with toxicity creates space for clarity, creativity, and genuine connections. One of the most powerful realizations in this journey is understanding that closure isn't something others give you, it's something you give yourself. Waiting for an apology, for someone to acknowledge their wrongs, or for a situation to resolve perfectly keeps you tethered to it. Closure isn't about the other person. It's about deciding that you no longer need their participation in your story to move forward. Detachment also means accepting that people don't have to be villains to be wrong for you. Not every toxic relationship is filled with obvious harm. Sometimes it's just misalignment, different values, goals, or emotional capacities. That doesn't make them bad, and it doesn't make you bad for walking away. Growth often requires outgrowing situations that no longer fit, and that's not a failure. It's a natural part of life. As you guard your inner citadel, you'll notice a shift. You'll stop feeling the need to explain your boundaries. You'll stop justifying your distance. You'll realize that peace isn't found in fixing others. It's found in choosing yourself. This doesn't mean you become cold or disconnected. In fact, it's the opposite. When you clear out the noise, you create space for genuine, meaningful connections, relationships based on mutual respect, not obligation or emotional debt. Letting go without drama also teaches you resilience. Life will always present challenges, people who disappoint you, situations that drain you. But when you master the art of quiet detachment, you stop being at the mercy of these experiences. You learn to face them with grace, to extract the lesson, and to move on without carrying the weight of resentment. Resentment is heavy. It anchors you to the past, keeping you tied to people and situations long after they've left your life. But when you cut ties cleanly, without bitterness, you free yourself. You reclaim not just your time, but your emotional bandwidth. You get to decide what deserves space in your mind, and most of the time, it's not the things you've been holding on to out of habit. Guarding your inner citadel isn't about building walls, it's about having gates. Gates you control, deciding who and what gets through. It's about realizing that peace isn't passive. It's something you actively create and protect. And sometimes the most powerful act of self-care is simply walking away, without a word, without a fight, without looking back. As you continue on this path, remember that cutting off toxic influences doesn't make you heartless. It makes you whole. It's not about the absence of conflict. It's about the presence of clarity. And in that clarity, you'll find a version of yourself that's stronger, lighter, and more at peace than you ever thought possible. When you've mastered the art of guarding your inner citadel, cutting off toxic influences without the noise of confrontation, you begin to realize something even more profound. The power of silence isn't just about protecting your peace. It's about transcending the need to engage in battles that don't serve you. This brings us to a deeper question. Why does the Stoic sage choose silence over confrontation, even when they have every reason to speak? The answer isn't about fear or avoidance. It's rooted in wisdom. Confrontation often feels necessary because of the illusion it creates, that if we argue hard enough, explain long enough, or defend passionately enough, we'll change the other person's mind, gain respect, or restore balance. But the Stoic understands a simple truth. Most confrontations aren't about seeking truth. They're about ego. They're emotional tug-of-wars where the goal isn't clarity, but control. Silence breaks that cycle. It refuses to participate in games where the rules are designed to drain your energy. While confrontation pulls you into emotional chaos, silence keeps you grounded. It's not a retreat. It's a refusal to step onto a battlefield where victory doesn't exist. The Stoic sage doesn't avoid conflict because they're weak. They avoid it because they see through its illusion. At the heart of this is the understanding that not every disagreement deserves your attention. In fact, most don't. People argue to be right, to feel validated, to assert dominance. But what happens when you don't engage? The argument collapses under its own weight. The need for validation fades when you realize you don't need someone's agreement to confirm your truth. The desire to win an argument feels pointless when you understand that winning doesn't change who you are. This doesn't mean the Stoic avoids difficult conversations. There's a difference between meaningful dialogue and pointless confrontation. The former is about growth, understanding, and problem-solving. The latter is about ego, control, and emotional reactivity. The Stoic chooses silence in the face of the latter because they know it's not their job to fix someone else's perception or to manage how others process their emotions. Silence also protects your clarity. Words, when used reactively, can become weapons, often turned against the person who wields them. In the heat of confrontation, emotions distort logic, and what starts as a simple disagreement spirals into personal attacks, defensiveness, and regret. The Stoic avoids this trap by pausing, reflecting, and often deciding that silence is the most powerful response. Not because they don't have something to say, but because not everything needs to be said. There's also a strategic depth to silence. It shifts the dynamic. When someone expects a reaction and receives none, it forces them to confront their own behavior without the distraction of your response. They can't deflect, blame, or escalate because there's nothing to push against. This disarming effect often reveals more than confrontation ever could. Silence exposes truth, not through force, but through absence. It creates a space where people hear the echo of their own words without interference. In relationships, this can be transformative. When faced with manipulation, disrespect, or emotional games, reacting gives power to the other person. It feeds the cycle. But silence? Silence removes the oxygen from the fire. It communicates boundaries without explanation, self-respect without arrogance, and clarity without conflict. It says, "I see what you're doing, but I'm not participating." One of the greatest misconceptions is that silence equals weakness or passivity. But silence requires more strength than speaking. It demands self-control, emotional resilience, and a deep understanding of one's own worth. It's easy to lash out, to defend, to argue. It's hard to sit with discomfort, to let others be wrong about you, to choose peace over the temporary satisfaction of winning. This choice isn't about suppressing emotions. The Stoic doesn't pretend not to feel frustration, hurt, or anger. They simply don't let those emotions dictate their actions. They process them internally, reflect on their source, and decide whether reacting aligns with their values. Often, the answer is no. The wisdom of silence also extends to self-reflection. The Stoic understands that not all battles are external. Sometimes the loudest confrontations happen within, the internal dialogue of self-doubt, regret, and overthinking. Here, too, silence is powerful. It's the practice of quieting the mind, observing thoughts without judgment, and finding peace in stillness. It's in these moments that clarity emerges, not through force, but through presence. Choosing silence doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough about your peace to protect it. It's not about ignoring problems. It's about addressing them in ways that are constructive, not reactive. Sometimes that means having difficult conversations. Other times, it means walking away without a word, because no conversation will change what needs to be changed. Silence also teaches patience. Not everything needs an immediate response. Time reveals truths that words often obscure. When you pause, when you hold back, you allow space for understanding to unfold naturally. This patience isn't passive. It's active restraint, a deliberate choice to prioritize wisdom over impulse. In a world that equates noise with importance, silence can feel radical. But the Stoic doesn't seek validation from the world. Their sense of worth isn't tied to being heard or understood by others. They find strength in the quiet, in the space where external chaos can't reach. This inner sanctuary is where true power resides, not in controlling others, but in mastering oneself. Silence is also a form of respect, both for oneself and for others. It acknowledges that not every situation requires your input, that sometimes listening is more powerful than speaking. It's an act of humility, recognizing that wisdom often comes from observation, not assertion. And here's the paradox. While silence may seem like an absence, it's often the most profound presence in the room. It holds space. It demands attention. It speaks without words. In the absence of noise, meaning becomes clearer. Truth stands out. And in that space, the Stoic finds not just peace, but power. So, why does the Stoic sage choose silence over confrontation? Because they've realized that the most important battles aren't won through words. They're won through understanding, through self-control, through the quiet confidence that doesn't need to be loud to be heard. And in that silence, they find something that confrontation can never offer: unshakable peace. Silence isn't just about withholding words. It's about holding space for your own peace. When the Stoic sage chooses silence over confrontation, it's not because they lack the words. It's because they've outgrown the need to use them where they don't matter. This naturally leads to another layer of Stoic mastery, the realization that you don't owe anyone an explanation for how you live your life. This is where apatheia comes into play, not the absence of feeling, but the presence of unwavering inner calm. It's about stopping the exhausting habit of justifying your choices to people who have no stake in your growth. Apatheia is a misunderstood concept. People often think it means being emotionless or indifferent. In truth, it's about emotional independence. It's the ability to stand firm in who you are without being swayed by the expectations, judgments, or opinions of others. When you operate from apatheia, you stop performing for an audience that doesn't matter. You stop explaining decisions that were never up for debate. Why do we feel the need to explain ourselves? It often comes from a place of insecurity or the desire for validation. We think that if people understand our reasons, they'll approve of us, or worse, that we need their approval to feel secure. But here's the truth. Explanations don't guarantee understanding. Some people aren't looking to understand you. They're looking to control you, to manipulate your narrative to fit their comfort zone. When you recognize this, you start to realize how much energy is wasted trying to be understood by people who've already made up their minds. The freedom comes when you let go of that need. You make a choice, you move forward, and you leave it at that. No essays, no overthinking, no justifications. The beauty of apatheia is that it teaches you to trust your own judgment more than the opinions that swirl around you. Your life doesn't need to be put on trial for every decision you make. You don't need to submit evidence to justify why you set boundaries, why you left a relationship, why you pursued a certain career, or why you said no. When you stop explaining yourself, you reclaim your energy. Think about how exhausting it is to constantly defend your choices. Every time you explain, you're giving away a piece of your peace, hoping for approval that you don't actually need. But when you stand in quiet confidence, when you simply say, "This is what I've chosen," without the need to expand, you send a clear message. I'm at peace with my decision. Whether you understand it or not is irrelevant. This isn't about arrogance, it's about clarity. Arrogance says, "I'm better than you." Apatheia says, "I don't need you to agree with me." There's a huge difference. One seeks to elevate the self by diminishing others. The other simply refuses to be diminished by external judgments. Of course, this doesn't mean you never explain yourself in life. In relationships built on mutual respect, sharing your thought process can deepen understanding. But even then, it's not about seeking permission. It's about connection. The key is knowing the difference between sharing to connect and explaining to appease. When you catch yourself over-explaining, pause and ask, am I doing this because I genuinely want to share, or because I'm afraid of being judged? That question alone can save you hours of unnecessary stress. Part of embracing apatheia is accepting that not everyone will like you, not everyone will understand you, and that's okay. You're not for everyone, and everyone isn't for you. The people who truly belong in your life won't need endless explanations. They'll respect your decisions, even if they don't fully understand them. They'll trust your ability to make choices without demanding a detailed report. This level of self-possession creates an invisible boundary. It tells the world, I know who I am, and I don't require external validation to maintain that knowledge. People feel that. It changes how they interact with you. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop inviting unnecessary opinions. You create a space where your choices stand on their own, without the noise of external judgment. Interestingly, when you no longer seek to justify yourself, you also become more tolerant of others. You stop expecting explanations from them. You realize that everyone is on their own path, making decisions based on experiences and values you might never fully understand. And that's fine. You don't need to understand to respect. This shift not only brings peace within, but also fosters healthier relationships. Another powerful aspect of apatheia is how it transforms your response to criticism. When you no longer feel compelled to defend yourself, criticism loses its sting. You can listen, reflect, and decide whether there's value in the feedback without feeling attacked. If it's useful, you grow from it. If it's just noise, you let it pass without absorbing it. Either way, your sense of self remains intact. Think about the mental freedom that comes with this mindset. No more rehearsing conversations in your head. No more overanalyzing what you said or didn't say. No more emotional roller coasters tied to other people's reactions. Just a steady, calm center that doesn't waver with every external gust of wind. This doesn't mean you become emotionally detached from life. On the contrary, it allows you to engage more fully because you're not burdened by the weight of unnecessary expectations. You show up authentically without the fear of judgment because you've already accepted yourself. And that's the deepest kind of peace. Practicing apatheia requires conscious effort. It's easy to fall back into old habits of over-explaining, especially if you've been conditioned to seek approval. But awareness is the first step. Notice when you're about to justify a choice. Pause. Ask yourself, do I really need to explain this? Or am I just uncomfortable with being misunderstood? Often you'll find that silence or a simple confident statement is enough. Over time, this becomes second nature. You'll find that you speak less, but what you say carries more weight. Your words won't be diluted by the need to be liked or understood. They'll come from a place of authenticity and clarity. Apatheia also teaches resilience. Life will throw challenges your way. People will misunderstand you, judge you, and project their insecurities onto you. But when you've cultivated inner calm, none of that sticks. It's like trying to write on water. The words disappear before they can leave a mark. You don't internalize other people's issues because you've learned that their opinions are a reflection of them, not you. And here's the unexpected gift. When you stop explaining yourself, you inspire others to do the same. Your quiet confidence becomes a model. It shows people that it's okay to stand firm without defensiveness, to live authentically without seeking external approval. In this way, apatheia isn't just personal, it's contagious. Ultimately, stopping the habit of justifying yourself is about reclaiming your power. It's about standing tall in who you are, not because you've convinced the world of your worth, but because you've convinced yourself. And once you've done that, the world's approval or disapproval loses its grip. So, the next time you feel the urge to explain, pause, breathe, and remember, your life isn't a courtroom. You're not on trial. You don't owe anyone an argument for being exactly who you are. Let your choices speak for themselves, and let your peace be the loudest thing about you. When you've embraced apatheia, the art of not just stopping the need to explain yourself, but genuinely feeling no obligation to do so, you find a new kind of freedom. But freedom isn't just about detaching from the need for validation. Sometimes it's about detaching from people, situations, and even parts of your own life that no longer align with your growth. The challenge isn't in the act of walking away, it's in doing so with virtue, without bitterness, resentment, or the emotional baggage that often lingers long after the door has closed. This is the Stoic way, walking away with grace, clarity, and strength, leaving behind not just the situation, but the weight of it. Detachment is often misunderstood. People equate it with coldness or indifference, as if to be detached means to stop caring. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. Detachment isn't about rejecting emotions. It's about not letting emotions control you. It's about recognizing when something has run its course and choosing to step away with dignity without letting it poison your heart or mind. Why is this so hard? Because when we invest time, energy, or love into something, we naturally create attachments. Whether it's a relationship, a job, a friendship, or even an idea of who we thought we'd become, letting go feels like a loss. The mind resists change, clinging to what's familiar, even if it's no longer good for us. But the Stoic understands that life is in constant motion. Holding on to what no longer serves us is like trying to hold water in a clenched fist. The tighter you grip, the more it slips away, leaving you exhausted and empty. Walking away with virtue starts with acceptance. Acceptance of reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. This doesn't mean resignation or defeat. It means seeing things clearly, without the fog of denial or false hope. When a relationship is one-sided, when a job drains more than it fulfills, when a situation constantly diminishes your peace, it's not a failure to acknowledge that. It's wisdom. The Stoic doesn't sugarcoat reality to make it more comfortable. They face it head-on and make decisions based on what aligns with their values and well-being. The next step is releasing the story you've attached to the situation. Often, the bitterness we carry isn't just about what happened. It's about the narrative we've built around it. I wasted my time. I should have known better. They owed me more. These thoughts create a cycle of resentment, anchoring us to the past. But here's the truth. Nothing is wasted if you've learned from it. Every experience shapes you, teaches you, and prepares you for what's next. The lesson is the gain. The growth is the reward. Detaching without bitterness also requires taking responsibility for your part in the story. This isn't about blaming yourself, but about owning your role. What did you tolerate for too long? Where did you ignore red flags? Where did you place your happiness in someone else's hands? Self-reflection can be uncomfortable, but it's liberating. When you see your patterns, you reclaim your power. You realize that while you can't control others, you can control your choices moving forward. Forgiveness plays a crucial role here, not for them, but for you. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. It traps you in the very energy you're trying to escape. Forgiveness isn't about excusing bad behavior or pretending it didn't hurt. It's about deciding that you're no longer willing to carry that hurt with you. It's choosing peace over being right, freedom over grudges. Walking away with virtue means leaving the door without slamming it behind you. You don't need dramatic exits, grand declarations, or vindictive parting shots. Silence often speaks louder than words. Distance does the work that arguments never could. When you detach with grace, you send a clear message, not to them, but to yourself, that your peace is non-negotiable. Another key element is focusing on what you're walking toward, not just what you're walking away from. It's easy to get stuck in the loss, the absence, the gap left behind, but detachment creates space for new growth. Every ending is a beginning in disguise. The Stoic shifts their attention from what's gone to what's possible. They don't dwell on closed doors, they look for open paths. This mindset also helps when dealing with regret. It's natural to replay decisions, wondering if you could have done something differently. But the past is unchangeable. What matters is how you carry it. The Stoic doesn't deny regret. They transform it into wisdom. They ask, what did this teach me about myself, my values, my boundaries? That shift turns regret from a burden into a teacher. There's also the practice of gratitude. Even in situations that ended painfully, there's often something to be grateful for, a lesson learned, a moment of joy, a realization about your own strength. Gratitude doesn't erase the hurt, but it balances the narrative. It reminds you that growth often comes wrapped in discomfort, that even the hardest chapters contribute to your story in meaningful ways. Walking away with virtue is ultimately an act of self-respect. It's a declaration that your well-being matters more than maintaining appearances, pleasing others, or clinging to what no longer fits. It's the courage to choose yourself, even when it's hard, even when it's lonely, even when it means stepping into the unknown. And here's the paradox. The more you practice this, the less dramatic it feels. Detachment becomes natural, not because you care less, but because you've learned to care differently. You realize that love, respect, and loyalty are not about possession or permanence. They're about presence, about showing up authentically while things align, and having the strength to let go gracefully when they don't. You'll find that life becomes lighter when you're not weighed down by unresolved emotions. Relationships become healthier when they're not rooted in dependency or fear of loss. You connect more deeply, not because you need others to fill a void, but because you've made peace with being whole on your own. This doesn't mean you never feel sadness or grief. Letting go can be painful. The Stoic doesn't deny this. They allow themselves to feel, but refuse to be defined by those feelings. They honor the emotion, then release it, like waves washing over a rock without eroding its foundation. One of the most powerful practices here is shifting your focus from control to influence. You can't control how others behave, how they feel, or what they do after you leave. But you can influence your own path. You can choose how you respond, how you heal, how you grow. That's where your real power lies. And sometimes walking away isn't about others at all. It's about shedding old versions of yourself, habits, beliefs, identities that no longer serve you. This can be the hardest detachment of all because it requires confronting your own comfort zones. But growth demands this shedding. The Stoic embraces it, not with bitterness for what's lost, but with curiosity for what's to come. In the end, walking away with virtue isn't about the absence of emotion. It's about the presence of intention. It's choosing to leave with your head held high, your heart open, and your spirit unburdened. It's not the distance you create that defines the detachment. It's the peace you carry as you move forward. And when you do this, when you walk away without bitterness, without resentment, you realize something profound. You were never leaving to escape something. You were leaving to return to yourself. And there's no destination more worthy than that. When you've mastered the art of walking away with virtue, detaching without bitterness, you begin to realize that peace isn't just something you find after leaving the wrong situations. It's something you protect every day, even when you stay. And this protection doesn't always come from dramatic exits or bold confrontations. In fact, the most powerful form of self-preservation often comes quietly, without a single argument. It's in the invisible lines you draw, the silent decisions you make, and the actions you take that speak louder than any explanation ever could. This is the Stoic approach, setting boundaries without words. Boundaries are often misunderstood. People think of them as rigid walls, as if protecting your peace requires shutting people out harshly. But Stoic boundaries aren't about isolation. They're about clarity. They're not about controlling others. They're about controlling what you allow into your life. The beauty of these boundaries is that they don't require endless discussions or justifications. You don't need to announce them to the world. You live them, you show them, and that's enough. The power of boundaries without words lies in their simplicity. You don't argue about what you tolerate. You just don't tolerate it. You don't debate whether someone's behavior is acceptable. You adjust your proximity accordingly. If someone disrespects your time, you stop making yourself available. If a relationship drains your energy, you limit your involvement. No dramatic exits, no heated explanations, just quiet, consistent action. Why is this so effective? Because actions cut through noise. Words can be twisted, debated, and dismissed. But actions are undeniable. When you consistently uphold your boundaries through your behavior, people understand them, whether they agree with them or not. It's clear without being confrontational, firm without being aggressive. The first step in setting boundaries without words is knowing your values. You can't protect what you haven't defined. What matters to you? What are your non-negotiables? Maybe it's respect, honesty, peace, or time. When you're clear about your values, boundaries become natural extensions of them. You don't need to think, should I tolerate this? Because your actions will reflect your values without hesitation. Consistency is key. A boundary isn't a one-time declaration. It's a pattern of behavior. If you say you value your time, but constantly allow it to be wasted, your actions contradict your boundary. But when your actions consistently align with your values, you don't need to explain yourself. People learn how to treat you based on how you treat yourself. Consider how this plays out in everyday life. If someone repeatedly interrupts you during conversations, you don't need to snap or scold. You can pause, maintain your calm, and simply stop engaging with that dynamic. Your lack of reaction teaches more than an emotional outburst ever could. Over time, people adjust, or they drift away. Either outcome serves your peace. Boundaries also apply to your time and energy. You don't have to explain why you're declining an invitation, saying no to extra work, or not responding immediately to messages. A simple, polite decline, without over-explaining, sends a clear message. Your time is valuable, and you choose how to spend it. The less you justify, the more confident you become in your decisions. Another powerful tool is silence. Silence isn't passive, it's an active boundary. When faced with disrespect, manipulation, or unnecessary drama, not responding speaks volumes. It's not about giving the silent treatment as a form of punishment. It's about preserving your energy. You don't owe anyone a reaction, especially if it compromises your peace. Physical boundaries are also important. Your environment affects your mental state. If a space drains you, you're allowed to leave. If someone's presence disrupts your peace, you're allowed to create distance. You don't need to announce, "I'm creating space," because you're negative. You simply create the space. The change in your behavior communicates everything necessary. Emotional boundaries are perhaps the most challenging because they require self-awareness. You're not responsible for other people's feelings, just as they're not responsible for yours. If someone tries to guilt you into doing something, you don't have to argue your case. A calm, "I understand how you feel, but this is my decision," is enough. No over-explaining, no emotional tug-of-war. One of the most freeing realizations is that boundaries aren't about changing others. They're about changing your response. You can't control how people act, but you can control how you engage, or choose not to engage. This shift in perspective is liberating because it takes the focus off external situations and places it back where your power truly lies, within yourself. Detaching from the outcome is another Stoic principle that strengthens boundaries. You set the boundary, not for their reaction, but for your own well-being, whether they respect it, challenge it, or ignore it. That's their part of the equation. Your part is to uphold it, regardless of their response. This detachment keeps you grounded because your peace isn't dependent on external validation. Boundaries without words also foster self-respect. Every time you honor your limits, you reinforce your sense of worth. You teach yourself that your feelings, time, and energy matter. This internal validation becomes more powerful than any external approval. Over time, you'll notice a shift. You stop seeking permission to protect your peace. You simply do it. Interestingly, the more you live by your boundaries, the less conflict you experience. People respect what's clear and consistent. They may not like your boundaries, but they'll understand them. And those who genuinely care about you will adapt because they value the relationship. Those who don't will naturally fall away, creating space for healthier connections. Boundaries also create emotional freedom. You no longer feel trapped in cycles of people-pleasing, over-explaining, or resentment. You make decisions based on what aligns with your well-being, not out of fear of disappointing others. This doesn't mean you become selfish or unkind. In fact, it allows you to be more authentic and present because you're not weighed down by unspoken frustrations. Another aspect of Stoic boundaries is the ability to stay calm when they're tested. People may push back, challenge, or question your decisions. This is where emotional discipline comes in. You don't need to defend, argue, or convince. A simple, calm repetition of your boundary, or no response at all, is enough. Over time, people learn that your boundaries aren't negotiable, not because you shout them, but because you live them. Reflection is an essential part of maintaining boundaries. Regularly ask yourself, does this situation align with my values? Am I honoring my limits? Where am I compromising my peace? These questions help you stay connected to your needs, making it easier to adjust when necessary. Boundaries also evolve. What served you in one season of life may not in another. The Stoic is flexible, not rigid. They adapt their boundaries as they grow, always with the goal of maintaining inner peace. This adaptability prevents resentment because you're not clinging to outdated limits. You're responding to your current reality. Remember that boundaries are a form of self-care. They're not about punishment or control. They're about creating the conditions in which you can thrive. When you approach boundaries from this mindset, they become less about restriction and more about freedom. The freedom to be yourself, to protect your energy, and to live with integrity. Setting boundaries without words isn't about being silent out of fear. It's about being silent with purpose. It's the quiet strength that comes from knowing who you are, what you stand for, and what you will or won't allow into your life. It's a language beyond words, a language of actions, presence, and unshakable peace. And once you master it, you realize that the most powerful statements are often the ones you never have to say. So when you master the art of setting boundaries without words, you start to notice something profound. Your life becomes quieter, not just on the outside, but within. The noise fades, the tension dissolves, and what's left is something priceless: peace. But peace isn't something you stumble upon and expect to keep without effort. It's fragile if left unguarded, easily chipped away by the demands of others, toxic environments, or even your own unchecked thoughts. This leads us to an essential Stoic principle. Your energy is sacred, and protecting your peace isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. The Stoics understood that energy isn't just about physical stamina. It's the essence of your focus, attention, and emotional well-being. Every interaction, every thought, every reaction either nourishes or drains this energy. The challenge is that most people spend it without thinking, like spare change jingling in their pockets, unaware of how quickly it's disappearing until they're left feeling depleted, anxious, or overwhelmed. Protecting your peace means becoming intentional about where your energy goes, treating it like a valuable resource, not an endless supply. It starts with awareness. You can't protect what you don't recognize as vulnerable. Pay attention to how you feel after different interactions and environments. Some people uplift you with their presence, while others leave you feeling drained. Some activities fuel your spirit, while others deplete it. Stoic wisdom teaches that you don't owe your energy to everything that asks for it. Just because someone demands your attention doesn't mean they deserve it. Just because a situation is loud doesn't mean it's important. One of the most effective ways to protect your peace is through selective engagement. Not every battle is yours to fight. Not every opinion deserves a response. Not every invitation requires a yes. The Stoics believed in the power of dichotomy of control, understanding what's within your power and what isn't. Your energy should be invested where it can make a difference. Your thoughts, actions, and choices. Wasting energy on what you can't control, like other people's opinions, past mistakes, or future worries, is like pouring water into a broken cup. Detachment is another tool for conserving energy. Detachment doesn't mean indifference. It means not allowing external circumstances to dictate your inner state. It's the ability to experience life fully without being emotionally hijacked by every twist and turn. When something upsets you, ask yourself, is this worth the energy I'm giving it? Often the answer is no. That realization alone can diffuse stress and redirect your focus to what truly matters. Mindful consumption plays a huge role in energy preservation. What you feed your mind affects your emotional state. Constant exposure to negativity, whether through news, social media, or toxic conversations, can erode your peace. The Stoic practice of negative visualization isn't about dwelling on the worst, but preparing the mind to face challenges with resilience. However, balance is key. Protecting your peace also means surrounding yourself with content and environments that inspire, uplift, and align with your values. Your thoughts are perhaps the biggest energy influencers. The Stoics emphasized the power of perception, that it's not events themselves that disturb us, but our interpretation of them. Mental clutter, overthinking, and self-criticism are energy leaks. Practicing thought awareness helps you catch these patterns early. When you notice your mind spiraling into unnecessary worry or negativity, pause. Redirect your thoughts to what you can control or let them pass without attachment, like clouds drifting across the sky. Emotional regulation is another cornerstone of protecting your peace. Reacting impulsively to every emotional trigger drains you. The Stoics practice the art of the pause, creating space between stimulus and response. In that space, you regain control. You choose your reaction instead of being controlled by it. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions, but acknowledging them without letting them dictate your behavior. Emotional maturity is the ability to feel deeply without losing your balance. Protecting your peace also involves intentional rest. In a culture that glorifies busyness, rest is often seen as laziness. But rest isn't the absence of productivity. It's what makes productivity sustainable. The Stoics valued reflection, solitude, and stillness, not as escapes from life, but as necessary practices to maintain clarity and resilience. Scheduling time to disconnect, even briefly, can recharge your mental and emotional reserves. Physical health is intertwined with mental peace. Exercise, nutrition, and sleep directly affect your energy levels and emotional stability. The body and mind are not separate entities. Neglecting one impacts the other. The Stoics practiced moderation, understanding that balance in physical habits supports mental clarity. Simple routines like walking in nature, mindful breathing, or consistent sleep patterns can create a foundation of calm that supports you through life's challenges. Gratitude is another powerful energy protector. Focusing on what's going well shifts your perspective from scarcity to abundance. It doesn't mean ignoring problems, but acknowledging that even in difficulty, there are things to be thankful for. This mindset reduces stress and fosters resilience. Starting or ending your day with a simple gratitude practice can anchor your mind in positivity, making it less susceptible to external disturbances. Saying no is a skill that directly protects your peace. Many people struggle with this out of fear of disappointing others or appearing selfish, but every yes to something that drains you is a no to your well-being. The Stoics believed in living according to nature, which includes honoring your limits. You don't have to justify your no. A simple, respectful decline is enough. The freedom that comes from setting these boundaries outweighs the temporary discomfort of saying no. Relationships are significant energy factors. While connection is vital, not all relationships are nourishing. The Stoics advised surrounding yourself with people who support your growth, not those who drain your spirit. This doesn't mean cutting people off at the first sign of conflict, but recognizing patterns. If a relationship consistently leaves you feeling depleted, it's worth examining whether it aligns with your values and well-being. Letting go of perfectionism is another energy-saving practice. The constant pursuit of flawless outcomes creates unnecessary stress. The Stoics embrace the concept of amor fati, love of fate, which means accepting life as it is, not as you wish it to be. This doesn't mean complacency, but finding peace in doing your best without being attached to results. Perfection is an illusion that drains energy. Progress and authenticity are more sustainable goals. Mindful communication protects your peace as well. Not every thought needs to be spoken, and not every conversation needs to be had. The Stoics valued brevity and clarity in speech, understanding that words carry energy. Before engaging in a discussion, ask, is this necessary? Does it add value? Choosing silence when appropriate isn't avoidance, it's wisdom. Words can either build bridges or burn energy unnecessarily. Living in alignment with your values is perhaps the most profound way to protect your peace. When your actions reflect your principles, there's an inner harmony that external chaos can't disrupt. This alignment creates a sense of integrity and authenticity, reducing inner conflict. The Stoics didn't seek approval from others because their peace came from living in accordance with their philosophy, not external validation. Adaptability is another key. Life is unpredictable. Resisting change drains energy. Accepting it conserves it. The Stoics practiced premeditatio malorum, anticipating challenges not with dread, but with preparation. This mindset helps you face difficulties with resilience, reducing the emotional toll of unexpected events. Adaptability doesn't mean being passive, it means being flexible without losing your core stability. Daily reflection helps maintain peace. The Stoics often reviewed their day, asking what went well, what could be improved, and how they responded to situations. This practice isn't about self-criticism, but continuous growth. Reflection creates self-awareness, allowing you to adjust your actions and mindset to better align with your values and protect your energy. Letting go of what no longer serves you is also crucial. Clinging to past mistakes, grudges, or outdated goals weighs heavily on your spirit. The Stoics believed in focusing on the present moment, the only time you can truly influence. Releasing what's beyond your control frees up mental space and energy for what matters now. Practicing presence is the ultimate form of energy protection. Worrying about the future or ruminating on the past scatters your focus. The Stoics emphasized mindfulness, not as a modern trend, but as a way of life. Being fully engaged in the present reduces anxiety and enhances clarity. Whether it's a simple task or a meaningful conversation, giving your full attention anchors you in the now, where peace resides. Protecting your peace isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily practice. It's in the choices you make, the thoughts you entertain, and the boundaries you uphold. Your energy is sacred because it shapes your experience of life. Guard it fiercely, invest it wisely, and watch how your inner world transforms, not by chance, but by choice. When you realize that your energy is sacred, you start to see life differently. You understand that not everything deserves your attention, not every battle is worth fighting, and not every connection is meant to last forever. Protecting your peace isn't just about setting boundaries, it's about knowing when to let go. And that's where the true challenge begins. Because while it's easy to talk about detachment, doing it without guilt or regret requires a level of emotional discipline that few truly master. This is the heart of Stoic wisdom, letting go gracefully, without carrying the weight of what could have been, what should have been, or what never was. Letting go isn't about being cold or indifferent. It's about recognizing that holding on to things that no longer serve you, relationships, expectations, mistakes, or even identities, is like dragging dead weight. It slows you down, drains your spirit, and clouds your clarity. The Stoics understood this deeply. They taught that attachment is often the root of suffering, not because we shouldn't care, but because we confuse caring with clinging. The first step in letting go like a Stoic is shifting your perspective on control. We often think that if we hold on tightly enough, we can prevent loss, failure, or disappointment. But the truth is, control is an illusion. You can influence outcomes through effort and intention, but you can't force life to bend to your will. The Stoics embraced the dichotomy of control, which teaches us to focus on what we can control, our thoughts, actions, and attitudes, and release attachment to everything else. Consider how much emotional energy is wasted trying to rewrite the past or predict the future. Regret is a heavy chain, keeping you anchored to moments you can't change. Guilt, when it lingers beyond its lesson, becomes self-punishment. But here's the thing. Both regret and guilt serve a purpose only when they lead to growth. Once the lesson is learned, their job is done. Carrying them beyond that point doesn't make you more responsible, it makes you stuck. Letting go without guilt starts with self-compassion. We often hold ourselves to impossible standards, believing we should have known better, done better, been better. But you can only act on the knowledge and awareness you had at the time. Growth is a process, not a straight line. When you release the expectation of perfection, you create space to acknowledge your mistakes without being defined by them. Detachment without regret also requires acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean you approve of what happened. It means you acknowledge reality as it is, not as you wish it were. It's the ability to say, "This happened, it hurt, and now I choose to move forward." Acceptance isn't passive resignation, it's active clarity. It frees you from the exhausting cycle of what-ifs and if-onlys. Another key element is redefining your relationship with loss. Loss isn't just about people, it's about dreams that didn't materialize, identities you outgrew, opportunities that passed. The Stoics viewed loss as a natural part of life's impermanence. Everything is temporary: success, failure, joy, sorrow. Clinging to permanence in an impermanent world is like trying to hold water in your hands. The tighter you grip, the faster it slips away. Letting go also means releasing attachment to outcomes. You can put in effort, make the right choices, and still not get the result you hoped for. That's not failure, that's life. The Stoics taught that virtue lies in the effort, not the outcome. Did you act with integrity? Did you give your best? If the answer is yes, the outcome, whether favorable or not, doesn't define you. One of the most powerful practices for detachment is reframing. Instead of viewing endings as failures, see them as transitions. What lesson did this experience teach you? How did it shape your growth? Reframing doesn't erase pain, but it gives it purpose. It transforms what feels like loss into a stepping stone. Emotional detachment isn't about numbing your feelings. The Stoics felt deeply. They just didn't let emotions control their decisions. Feelings are natural, but they're not always reliable indicators of truth. You can feel regret without being at fault. You can feel guilt without having done something wrong. The key is to acknowledge your emotions without letting them dictate your narrative. Letting go also involves forgiveness, not just of others, but of yourself. We're often our harshest critics, replaying mistakes long after everyone else has moved on. Forgiveness isn't about excusing behavior. It's about choosing peace over punishment. It's saying, "I accept that I did the best I could with what I knew then. Now I know better, and I'll do better." A practical way to practice detachment is through intentional reflection. Ask yourself, why am I holding on to this? What am I afraid of losing if I let go? Often it's not the person, situation, or outcome we're clinging to. It's the story we've attached to it. Maybe it's the fear of being wrong, the need for validation, or the belief that letting go means giving up. But letting go isn't giving up. It's choosing freedom over fixation. The Stoics also emphasized living in the present. Regret pulls you backward. Anxiety pushes you forward. Peace exists only in the present moment. When you focus on what's in front of you, your breath, your actions, your choices, you loosen the grip of past mistakes and future fears. Mindfulness isn't just a buzzword. It's a tool for anchoring yourself in now, where guilt and regret can't thrive. Another strategy is to simplify your life. Clutter isn't just physical, it's emotional and mental too. Letting go of unnecessary obligations, toxic relationships, and unrealistic expectations clears space for clarity. The Stoics believed in living simply, not just in possessions, but in thoughts. Simplicity reduces the noise, making it easier to hear what truly matters. Letting go also means trusting yourself. Sometimes we hold on because we doubt our ability to thrive without what we're clinging to. But growth often requires release. Think of nature. Trees shed leaves to survive winter, not because they're weak, but because it's necessary for renewal. Trust that letting go isn't the end. It's the beginning of something new, even if you can't see it yet. Gratitude can be a powerful tool here. When you focus on what you've gained from an experience, whether it's wisdom, resilience, or clarity, it shifts the narrative from loss to learning. Gratitude doesn't minimize pain, but it balances it with perspective. It reminds you that even endings have value. Another important practice is setting new intentions. When you let go of something, fill that space with purpose. What do you want to focus on now? What aligns with your current values and goals? Setting intentions gives your energy a new direction, preventing the void that often follows detachment from becoming filled with lingering regret. Stoicism also teaches us to embrace change as a constant. Life is fluid. Holding on tightly to anything, beliefs, relationships, identities, creates friction when life inevitably shifts. Flexibility is strength. The more adaptable you are, the less you suffer when things change, because you've trained yourself to flow with life, not resist it. Community and connection can support this process. While letting go is an internal journey, sharing your experiences with trusted people can offer new perspectives. Sometimes hearing someone say, "I've been there too," or "It's okay to move on," helps ease the emotional load. Vulnerability isn't weakness. It's a bridge to understanding and healing. Remember that detachment is a practice, not a destination. Some days it's easy to release. Other days, the weight feels heavier. That's normal. The goal isn't perfection, but progress. Every time you choose to release a little more, whether it's a thought, a habit, or a lingering emotion, you strengthen your ability to live freely. Letting go like a Stoic doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care deeply about your peace, your growth, and your alignment with what truly matters. It's the art of holding life lightly, appreciating what comes, learning from what stays, and releasing what needs to go, all without guilt or regret. Because in the end, what you let go of doesn't define you. How you let go does. Once you've learned the art of letting go without guilt or regret, you realize something even more powerful. Not everything or everyone deserves your emotional investment. Detachment isn't just about releasing the past or walking away from what no longer serves you. It's also about how you handle the people and situations that actively try to pull you back in, those who seek to manipulate your emotions to gain control. This is where the Stoic discipline of indifference becomes your greatest shield. It's not about being cold-hearted, it's about being unshakable. It's about disarming manipulation, not with rage, not with explanations, but with silence. Indifference in the Stoic sense doesn't mean apathy or neglect. It means mastering your emotions to the point where external forces no longer dictate your inner peace. The Stoics called this apatheia, a state of being undisturbed by things beyond your control. It's the ability to remain steady when others try to provoke, guilt, or manipulate you. Silence, in this context, isn't passive. It's active resistance. It's a choice, a refusal to engage in games designed to destabilize you. Why is silence so powerful against manipulation? Because manipulation feeds on reaction. It thrives on emotional responses: anger, defensiveness, guilt. When you react, you hand over control. But when you respond with calm indifference, you starve the manipulator of their power source. They can't control you if you refuse to play the game. Think about it. Manipulation is a strategy designed to trigger you. It relies on emotional hooks, words meant to guilt you, provoke you, or make you doubt yourself. The moment you feel the urge to defend, justify, or retaliate, you're already caught in the web. The Stoic approach is to recognize the trap and choose not to step into it. Not by arguing your case, but by standing in silent clarity, unmoved. The first step in cultivating this discipline is self-awareness. You need to recognize your emotional triggers. What makes you feel the need to explain yourself? What kind of comments ignite your anger or insecurity? Awareness is key because manipulation often works beneath the surface, subtly pressing on unhealed wounds. When you know your triggers, you can pause before reacting, creating space to choose silence instead of an automatic response. Silence isn't just the absence of words, it's the presence of control. It's the ability to sit with discomfort without trying to fix it through external validation. This doesn't mean you suppress your feelings. Feelings arise naturally. But the Stoic discipline of indifference teaches you not to be ruled by them. You observe your emotions without letting them dictate your actions. Another element of this practice is understanding that not every accusation or judgment requires your defense. Manipulators often use personal attacks to bait you into emotional reactions. The desire to defend yourself is natural, but unnecessary. The truth doesn't become less true because someone questions it. Your integrity isn't validated by others' approval. When you're secure in who you are, you don't need to argue your worth. Silence in the face of manipulation sends a clear message. Your opinion does not control me. This can be unsettling to those who rely on emotional manipulation because it exposes their lack of real power. They expect you to react, to justify, to engage. When you don't, their tactics lose effectiveness. It's like trying to push against a wall that doesn't push back. The force dissipates into nothing. This discipline also applies to situations designed to create conflict. Some people thrive on drama. They provoke just to watch the reaction. The Stoic response is simple. Don't fuel the fire. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. Silence, paired with a calm demeanor, diffuses situations that would otherwise escalate. It shows strength, not weakness. Indifference isn't about being emotionally numb. It's about emotional maturity. It's the ability to choose where your energy goes. You care deeply about your values, your peace, and your growth, but you don't waste energy on manipulative tactics. This selective focus is what gives indifference its power. You're not indifferent because you don't feel. You're indifferent because you refuse to be controlled by feelings that don't serve you. Another critical aspect is detaching from the outcome of interactions. Manipulation often works because people want to control how others perceive them. They fear being misunderstood, judged, or disliked. The Stoic approach is to release that need. You're responsible for your actions and intentions, not how others interpret them. When you let go of the desire to manage perceptions, you free yourself from the emotional hooks manipulators rely on. Silence also allows space for clarity. In heated moments, words can be impulsive, fueled by emotion rather than reason. When you choose silence, you create room to process, reflect, and respond thoughtfully if needed. This doesn't mean you never speak up. It means you speak with intention, not as a reflex to emotional provocation. Stoic indifference is also a boundary. It says, without words, this is where I end, and you begin. Your emotions are yours to manage, not mine to absorb. This boundary protects your mental space. You're not responsible for fixing others' feelings, especially when those feelings are weaponized to control you. Practicing this discipline requires consistency. The more you choose silence over reaction, the stronger your emotional resilience becomes. At first, it may feel uncomfortable, even unnatural. Society often equates silence with weakness or passivity, but true strength is quiet. It doesn't need to prove itself through noise. There's also an unexpected benefit. When you stop reacting to manipulation, you gain clarity about people's intentions. Without the fog of emotional entanglement, you see situations for what they are, not what you wish they were. This clarity helps you make decisions based on reality, not emotional distortion. Indifference doesn't mean you never engage. It means you engage from a place of choice, not compulsion. You decide when to speak, when to act, and when to walk away. Not because you're avoiding conflict, but because you're choosing peace over unnecessary battles. Another layer to this discipline is self-mastery. Manipulation often triggers our ego, the part that wants to be right, to win, to prove something. The Stoic recognizes this as an internal battle. Mastery isn't about defeating others. It's about defeating the impulse to be controlled by external forces. Silence becomes not just a response to others, but a practice of inner strength. Even in situations where confrontation is necessary, the Stoic approach transforms how you handle it. You don't react out of anger. You respond with calm, measured clarity. You state your boundaries, express your position, and then disengage. The goal isn't to dominate or convince, it's to maintain integrity and peace. Another powerful tool is reframing. When faced with manipulation, instead of asking, "Why are they doing this to me?" shift the question to, "What does this reveal about them?" This shift moves you from a reactive mindset to an observant one. You're not in the emotional trenches. You're watching from a place of calm detachment. Self-reflection also plays a role. After emotionally charged situations, take time to reflect. What did I feel? Why did it trigger me? How can I maintain my composure next time? This practice isn't about self-criticism. It's about continuous growth. Every encounter is an opportunity to strengthen your discipline. In relationships, this discipline fosters healthier dynamics. When you refuse to engage in manipulative patterns, you set a new standard. People either rise to meet it or fall away. Either outcome serves your well-being. Over time, you attract connections rooted in mutual respect, not control. Ultimately, the discipline of indifference is about reclaiming your power. It's recognizing that while you can't control how others behave, you can control how you respond. And in that response, or the deliberate choice not to respond, you find freedom. Freedom from manipulation, from emotional chaos, from the exhausting cycle of reaction. Silence isn't empty. It's full of intention, strength, and clarity. It's a declaration that your peace is non-negotiable, that your energy is sacred, and that your worth isn't up for debate. When you master the discipline of indifference, you become unshakable. Not because the world stops trying to shake you, but because you've built an inner foundation too solid to be moved. When you master the discipline of indifference, you begin to see life from a different perspective. You realize that not everything deserves your attention, not every situation requires your reaction, and not every person is entitled to your energy. This understanding leads to a profound truth. Your energy is your most valuable asset. Just like money, time, or resources, it must be managed wisely. This is where the Stoic Guide to Emotional Economy comes into play. It's not just about conserving energy, it's about investing it where it truly matters. Emotional economy is the art of managing your feelings with intention. It's about recognizing that every thought, reaction, and emotional outburst has a cost. The more you spend on things that don't serve you, the less you have for what truly enriches your life. The Stoics understood this well. They believed that peace isn't something you stumble upon. It's something you create through disciplined choices about where you place your focus and emotions. The first step in mastering your emotional economy is understanding that you are in control. This might sound simple, but it's a radical shift in thinking. Most people operate on autopilot, reacting to life as if emotions are something that just happen to them. But emotions are responses, not random events. They arise from how you interpret situations. The Stoics taught that between stimulus and response lies a space, a choice. In that space, you decide how much of your emotional energy to invest. Consider how often people drain their energy over things they can't control: traffic jams, rude comments, or even weather. These reactions are automatic for many, but they're optional. You don't have to give away your peace every time life doesn't go as planned. The Stoic approach is to pause and ask, is this worth my energy? Often the answer is no. Emotional economy also means being selective about what you engage with. Not every invitation to argue is worth accepting. Not every problem is yours to solve. When you recognize that your energy is finite, you stop scattering it across meaningless conflicts and start conserving it for what truly matters: your goals, growth, and well-being. Another key principle is managing emotional debt. Just like financial debt, emotional debt accumulates when you invest energy without returns, holding grudges, ruminating on the past, or worrying about the future. These habits drain you without offering anything productive in return. The Stoic practice is to acknowledge these emotional debts and consciously release them. You can't change the past, and worrying about the future doesn't prevent problems. It only robs the present of peace. Self-awareness is the foundation of emotional economy. You need to understand your triggers, the things that drain you unnecessarily. Is it certain people, environments, or thought patterns? Once you identify these, you can create boundaries. Not all boundaries are physical, some are mental. You can set limits on how much mental space you give to negativity, drama, or external validation. Managing your internal dialogue is another crucial part. The stories you tell yourself shape your emotional landscape. If you constantly think, "I'm not good enough," or "they're out to get me," you create emotional expenses that drain your confidence and peace. The Stoic practice of reframing helps here. Instead of seeing challenges as threats, view them as opportunities for growth. Instead of seeing mistakes as failures, see them as lessons. This shift reduces emotional waste. Focus is the currency of emotional economy. Where you place your attention determines where your energy flows. If you focus on problems without seeking solutions, you fuel anxiety. If you dwell on what's missing, you cultivate dissatisfaction. The Stoics advised focusing on what you can control: your thoughts, actions, and responses. This isn't about ignoring problems, but approaching them with clarity and purpose. Gratitude is a powerful tool in this process. It's not just about feeling thankful when things go well. It's about finding something to appreciate, even in difficulty. Gratitude shifts your focus from lack to abundance, reducing emotional stress. When you're grateful, you spend less energy on comparison, envy, or resentment because you're anchored in the value of what you already have. Rest and recovery are also vital. Emotional energy isn't limitless. Just as physical exertion requires rest, so does emotional labor. The Stoics valued reflection and solitude not as escapes, but as practices to recharge. Taking time to pause, reflect, and process your experiences helps you regain emotional balance. It's not laziness, it's maintenance. The people you surround yourself with also impact your emotional economy. Some relationships nourish you, while others drain you. The Stoic approach is to cultivate connections that support your growth and minimize those that consistently deplete your energy. This doesn't mean cutting people off harshly, but being mindful of where your emotional resources are going. Another practice is emotional budgeting. Just as you budget money, you can budget your emotional energy. Decide in advance how much energy you're willing to spend on certain situations. For example, if you know a meeting might be tense, set an intention. I'll stay calm, contribute constructively, and not carry the stress afterward. This proactive approach helps you manage emotions before they overwhelm you. Letting go of perfectionism is another way to conserve energy. The pursuit of perfection is exhausting because it's unattainable. The Stoics taught the value of progress over perfection. Focus on effort, not flawless outcomes. This mindset reduces anxiety and frees up energy for meaningful pursuits. Mindful communication also plays a role. Words carry emotional weight. Speaking impulsively, especially in anger, often leads to regret and conflict, draining more energy as you deal with the fallout. The Stoic practice is to speak with intention, clarity, and restraint. Silence, when chosen wisely, can be more powerful than words. Managing expectations is another critical aspect. Unmet expectations are a significant source of emotional frustration. The Stoics advised setting realistic expectations, understanding that people are flawed, situations are unpredictable, and life doesn't always go as planned. This doesn't mean being pessimistic. It means being prepared. When you expect challenges, you're less rattled when they arise, conserving emotional energy. Another principle is detachment from outcomes. You can control your efforts, but not the results. The Stoics believed in focusing on the process, not the prize. Whether you succeed or fail, your peace remains intact because it wasn't tied to the outcome in the first place. This detachment reduces emotional highs and lows, creating a steady state of resilience. Practicing presence is the final pillar of emotional economy. Regret pulls you into the past. Anxiety pushes you into the future. The present is where your power lies. Mindfulness, being fully engaged in the current moment, reduces emotional leakage. Whether it's a conversation, a task, or a simple breath, being present anchors your energy where it's most effective. Your energy is a limited resource. How you manage it determines the quality of your life. The Stoic guide to emotional economy isn't about suppressing feelings. It's about channeling them wisely. It's about investing in what nurtures your growth, conserving where it's wasted, and understanding that true strength comes from within. Master this, and you'll find that peace isn't something you chase, it's something you carry. When you understand that your energy is your control and you begin to manage it wisely, you start noticing how much of it is drained not by external circumstances, but by what you choose to hold on to, especially grudges. Grudges are emotional debts we keep paying interest on long after the original issue has passed. They weigh you down, cloud your judgment, and trap your focus in the past. This is where the Stoic philosophy offers a powerful shift. Clarity through detachment. Instead of clinging to resentment, Stoics choose growth. Not because they're unaffected by pain or betrayal, but because they understand that holding on to bitterness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. Detachment isn't about indifference or suppressing emotions. It's about creating enough distance from your emotions to see things clearly. Grudges distort your perspective, keeping you emotionally tied to people or situations that no longer deserve space in your mind. The Stoics believed that true freedom comes when you stop letting the actions of others control your inner state. They didn't deny the reality of hurt, but they refused to let that hurt define them. The first step towards clarity through detachment is understanding the cost of holding on to grudges. Every time you replay an argument, dwell on a betrayal, or fantasize about revenge, you're investing emotional energy in something that offers no return. This constant mental rehearsal doesn't change the past. It just keeps the wound open. The Stoic response is to ask, what purpose does this serve? If the answer is none, it's time to let go. Detachment allows you to shift from being reactive to reflective. When you're caught in a grudge, your reactions are automatic, fueled by anger or resentment. But when you step back, you gain the space to process your feelings without being overwhelmed by them. This doesn't mean you excuse harmful behavior. It means you refuse to let that behavior have power over your peace of mind. Another key to detachment is recognizing that people act according to their nature, shaped by their experiences, beliefs, and limitations. The Stoics taught that expecting others to behave differently than they're capable of is a source of unnecessary frustration. When you accept that people are flawed, just like you, it becomes easier to release the expectation that they should have done better. This isn't about lowering your standards, but about aligning them with reality. Forgiveness, in the Stoic sense, isn't about condoning harm. It's about freeing yourself from the emotional chains that bind you to past pain. It's a decision to reclaim your mental and emotional space. Holding a grudge is like carrying a heavy load long after the journey has ended. Letting go lightens your burden, allowing you to move forward with greater ease. Detachment also helps you focus on what's within your control. You can't change the past, rewrite someone's actions, or force an apology, but you can control how you respond to the memory of those events. The Stoics emphasized that your power lies not in changing circumstances, but in mastering your perception of them. By choosing growth over grudges, you shift from a victim mindset to one of personal agency. One way to practice this is through reflection. When you feel resentment rising, pause and ask, what am I really holding on to? Often it's not just the event, but the meaning you've attached to it. Feelings of betrayal, injustice, or disappointment. Acknowledging these emotions without judgment allows you to process them without letting them fester. Detachment isn't about emotional numbness. It's about emotional clarity. It's recognizing that emotions are signals, not directives. They can inform your understanding, but don't have to dictate your actions. The Stoics didn't suppress feelings. They observed them, questioned them, and decided whether they deserved attention. This practice transforms emotional reactions into thoughtful responses. Another powerful tool is perspective shifting. When you're stuck in resentment, your focus narrows to the offense and the person who caused it. But life is bigger than a single moment of hurt. The Stoics often use the technique of viewing situations from a cosmic perspective, asking, will this matter a year from now? 5 years? In the grand scheme of my life, how significant is this? This mental zoom-out diminishes the grip of grudges, highlighting their insignificance compared to your overall journey. Growth also comes from reframing adversity. The Stoics believed that challenges, including emotional pain, are opportunities for self-improvement. Instead of asking, why did this happen to me? They asked, what can I learn from this? Every setback, betrayal, or disappointment holds a lesson about your values, your boundaries, or your resilience. When you focus on the lesson rather than the hurt, you transform pain into growth. Boundaries are another aspect of healthy detachment. Letting go of a grudge doesn't mean allowing the same behavior to continue. You can forgive and still set firm boundaries to protect your well-being. Detachment helps you enforce these boundaries without anger or bitterness, simply as an act of self-respect. It's saying, I value my peace too much to keep engaging in this dynamic. Detachment also fosters emotional resilience. Life will always present situations that trigger hurt or anger. The goal isn't to avoid these experiences, but to build the strength to move through them without being consumed. The more you practice letting go, the easier it becomes. Over time, you develop an inner calm that external events can't easily disturb. Mindfulness is a key practice here. Being present helps you recognize when old resentments creep back in. The mind loves to revisit past grievances, especially when you're stressed or vulnerable. Mindfulness allows you to catch these patterns early, acknowledge them without judgment, and redirect your focus to the present moment, where peace resides. Another aspect is self-forgiveness. Sometimes the grudges we hold are against ourselves. We replay mistakes, regrets, or decisions we wish we'd made differently. The Stoics taught that wisdom comes from reflection, not regret. You can't change the past, but you can learn from it. Self-forgiveness isn't about ignoring faults. It's about recognizing your humanity and choosing growth over self-punishment. Detachment also helps you navigate relationships more effectively. When you're not driven by grudges, you can engage with others from a place of clarity rather than emotional baggage. This doesn't mean rekindling every relationship you've outgrown, but it allows you to interact without the weight of unresolved resentment. It's liberating to realize that you don't need closure from others to find peace within yourself. Practicing gratitude is another way to shift focus from grudges to growth. Gratitude doesn't erase pain, but it balances your perspective. Instead of fixating on what went wrong, you acknowledge what's going right. This shift doesn't diminish the hurt, but prevents it from overshadowing the rest of your life. Journaling can be a powerful tool for writing down your thoughts helps you untangle emotions and gain clarity. When you see your grievances on paper, they often lose their intensity. Journaling also allows you to track your growth over time, noticing how past hurts that once felt overwhelming now seem distant. Accepting impermanence is another Stoic principle that aids detachment. Everything in life is temporary: experiences, emotions, relationships. Clinging to the past is like trying to hold water in your hands. Understanding this impermanence helps you appreciate moments without becoming attached to them. It fosters a mindset of flow rather than fixation. Compassion, surprisingly, can also help release grudges. This doesn't mean excusing harmful behavior, but recognizing that people act from their own wounds, fears, or ignorance. Understanding this doesn't justify their actions, but it can soften the emotional charge you carry. Compassion isn't for them, it's for you, to free your heart from the heaviness of resentment. Detachment also aligns with authenticity. When you let go of grudges, you stop performing emotional roles, like the victim, the avenger, or the martyr. You live more authentically because you're not defined by past conflicts. Your identity isn't tied to what happened to you, but to how you choose to respond. Another practice is focusing on your purpose. When you're deeply engaged in meaningful goals, you have less mental space for grudges. Purpose gives your energy direction, making it harder for past grievances to anchor you in stagnation. The Stoics believed that living in accordance with your values creates a sense of fulfillment that overshadows petty resentments. Letting go of grudges doesn't mean you forget what happened. It means you remember without the emotional charge. The memory remains, but the sting fades. You carry the wisdom, not the wound. This is the essence of clarity through detachment, not erasing the past, but refusing to let it control your present. Detachment is a skill, not a switch. It requires practice, patience, and self-compassion. Some days it's easier than others. The goal isn't perfection, but progress. Every time you choose growth over a grudge, you strengthen this muscle. Over time, you'll find that situations that once consumed you now pass through you without leaving a mark. In the end, detachment isn't about letting go of people or experiences. It's about letting go of the emotional weight you've been carrying. It's about choosing peace over pain, clarity over chaos, and growth over grudges. The Stoics didn't just teach this, they lived it, and through their wisdom, so can you. When you learn to find clarity through detachment, you begin to see how much power you hold over your inner world. You realize that what truly affects you isn't what people do to you, but how you respond, or more importantly, if you respond at all. This brings us to a deeper lesson in Stoicism, the virtue of non-reaction. While detachment helps you let go of past hurts, non-reaction teaches you how to rise above insults in real time. It's not about suppressing emotions or pretending to be unaffected. It's about mastering your mind so completely that no external provocation can pull you out of your peace. The Stoics believe that insults only have the power you give them. Words are just sounds, fleeting and powerless unless you attach meaning to them. An insult doesn't define you unless you accept it as part of your identity. This is where non-reaction becomes a form of strength, not the absence of feeling, but the refusal to let fleeting negativity dictate your emotions or behavior. One of the first steps toward mastering non-reaction is understanding the nature of insults. They often reflect more about the person delivering them than the one receiving them. When someone lashes out, it usually comes from their own insecurities, frustrations, or unmet needs. Recognizing this can create an emotional distance between you and the words being thrown your way. You stop taking things personally because you see that their behavior is a projection, not a reflection of your worth. Non-reaction is rooted in the Stoic principle of control. You can't control what people say or do, but you can control how you respond. This realization is liberating. It shifts your focus from trying to manage external chaos to mastering your internal stability. When you stop reacting to every slight or insult, you conserve your emotional energy for things that truly matter. Practicing non-reaction doesn't mean you become passive or indifferent. It means you choose your battles wisely. Not every comment deserves your attention. Silence, in many cases, is a more powerful response than words. It communicates confidence, self-control, and an unshaken sense of self. When you don't react, you deny the other person the satisfaction of seeing you disturbed. This isn't about playing mind games. It's about protecting your peace. The Stoics also emphasized the importance of self-awareness in cultivating non-reaction. You need to know your triggers, those specific words, tones, or situations that ignite a quick emotional response. By identifying these triggers, you create space between stimulus and response. In that space, you regain control. Instead of reacting impulsively, you pause, reflect, and respond, or choose not to respond, with intention. Another tool is reframing. When someone insults you, instead of thinking, "How dare they say that?" shift your perspective to, "Why does this bother me?" Often, our reactions are tied to our own insecurities. An insult only stings if it touches a nerve within us. By examining your reactions, you can uncover areas where you need to strengthen your self-esteem. This turns insults into opportunities for growth. Non-reaction is also an act of emotional economy. Reacting to every provocation drains your energy. It pulls you into unnecessary conflicts and emotional turmoil. The Stoics believed in conserving energy for what truly matters: personal growth, meaningful relationships, and virtuous living. When you practice non-reaction, you're not avoiding confrontation out of fear. You're choosing peace because it's the more valuable currency. Another key element is humility. Sometimes our pride demands that we respond to insults to defend our honor, but true confidence doesn't need external validation. When you're secure in who you are, you don't need to prove your worth through arguments. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "If someone speaks ill of you, rather than defend yourself, ask if what they say is true. If it is, correct yourself. If it's not, why be upset?" This level of humility disarms both the insult and the insulter. Non-reaction doesn't mean you suppress your emotions. The Stoics acknowledged emotions as natural human experiences. The key is to observe them without being controlled by them. When you feel anger or hurt rising, acknowledge it without judgment. Take a breath. Let the emotion pass like a wave without letting it dictate your next action. This practice builds emotional resilience over time. Detachment from ego is crucial in mastering non-reaction. Ego thrives on external validation and crumbles under criticism. The less you rely on others' opinions to define your self-worth, the less reactive you become. Your sense of identity should be anchored in your values, not in fleeting judgments from others. When your self-esteem is internal rather than external, insults lose their power. Another practical strategy is the art of pausing. In heated moments, the urge to react is strong. A deliberate pause creates space for reflection. Count to 10, take a deep breath, or mentally step back from the situation. This brief moment of stillness can prevent words or actions you might later regret. It's not about delaying conflict. It's about diffusing it with clarity. Non-reaction also fosters better relationships. When you refuse to engage in petty conflicts, you set a tone of maturity and respect. This doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect, but you handle it with grace. Your calm demeanor often de-escalates tension, encouraging others to mirror your composure. It shows that you're not easily manipulated by emotional games. In some cases, responding with humor can be a powerful form of non-reaction. Humor disarms hostility and shifts the dynamic. It shows that you're not taking the insult seriously, which often frustrates those who aim to provoke. However, this should be done with lightness, not sarcasm or passive aggression, to maintain the integrity of the Stoic approach. Another aspect is understanding the impermanence of emotions. Feelings of anger or hurt often feel intense in the moment, but fade with time. The Stoics practiced negative visualization, not to dwell on negativity, but to gain perspective. They reminded themselves of life's fleeting nature, which made minor insults seem trivial in the grand scheme of things. Practicing gratitude can also help. When you focus on what you're grateful for, it's harder for negativity to take root. Gratitude shifts your attention from the insult to the abundance in your life. It's a reminder that a single negative comment doesn't define your reality. This mindset creates a buffer against emotional reactivity. Self-reflection is key to strengthening non-reaction. After an encounter, ask yourself, did I react or respond? What triggered me? How can I handle it better next time? This isn't about self-criticism, but continuous improvement. Each situation becomes a lesson in emotional mastery. It's also helpful to remember that everyone views the world through their own lens. People's judgments are often more about their beliefs and biases than about objective truth. Understanding this can reduce the weight you place on their words. It's not dismissing feedback entirely, but discerning what's constructive and what's not worth your energy. Non-reaction isn't about being emotionless. It's about emotional sovereignty. It's knowing that while you can't control the waves of life, you can learn to surf them with grace. This inner stability becomes a source of quiet strength that others notice, even if they can't quite understand it. Meditation can support this practice. Mindfulness meditation trains your mind to observe thoughts and emotions without attachment. It strengthens the mental muscle that allows you to pause before reacting. Over time, this awareness becomes second nature, creating a calm, centered response to life's challenges. Detachment from outcomes is another key element. Often, we react because we're attached to a desired outcome, being understood, respected, or vindicated. When you release this attachment, you're less affected by how others perceive you. Your peace is no longer contingent on external factors, making you less reactive to criticism or insults. Practicing compassion, even towards those who insult you, can be transformative. This doesn't mean tolerating abuse, but recognizing that hurt people often hurt others. Compassion doesn't excuse bad behavior, but it frees you from carrying the emotional burden of resentment. It shifts your focus from, "Why did they say that?" to, "What pain might they be carrying?" Non-reaction also aligns with the Stoic idea of living according to virtue. The Stoics believed that true happiness comes from living in alignment with wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline. Reacting impulsively often pulls you away from these virtues. Choosing non-reaction is an act of discipline that reinforces your commitment to living a virtuous life. Another strategy is to mentally prepare for insults. The Stoics practiced premeditatio malorum, anticipating potential challenges to build resilience. By acknowledging that not everyone will be kind or respectful, you reduce the element of surprise when it happens. This preparation makes insults feel less personal and more like expected bumps on the road of life. Focus on your purpose. When you're deeply engaged in meaningful goals, petty insults lose their significance. Your attention is directed towards growth, not grievances. This sense of purpose creates a natural filter, allowing irrelevant negativity to pass through without sticking. The virtue of non-reaction isn't about being unaffected by life's challenges. It's about rising above them with grace, wisdom, and inner strength. It's the quiet confidence that comes from knowing that you control your mind, not the external world. And in that mastery, you find a freedom that no insult can touch. When you master the virtue of non-reaction, you begin to understand the deeper layers of control, not just over your impulses, but over your entire presence. This brings us to a powerful realization. Stillness isn't weakness, and silence isn't emptiness. In fact, within silence lies an undeniable strength that often speaks louder than words ever could. The strength of stillness is one of the most overlooked virtues in our noisy, reaction-driven world. But the Stoics understood its value deeply. They knew that silence isn't just the absence of sound, it's the presence of power, discipline, and clarity. Silence, when rooted in intention, becomes a statement. It's a choice to withhold, not because there's nothing to say, but because not everything deserves a response. The Stoics believed that unnecessary words often dilute wisdom. Every time you speak without purpose, you scatter your focus. But when you choose silence deliberately, you concentrate your energy, creating a space where reflection, understanding, and strength can grow. The first lesson in the strength of stillness is realizing that silence can disarm situations where words would only add fuel to the fire. In conflict, people often feel the urge to defend, explain, or retaliate. But silence has a way of diffusing tension. It removes the oxygen that conflict feeds on. When someone expects a reaction and receives none, it shifts the dynamic entirely. They are left to sit with their own words, often revealing the emptiness of their arguments. Silence also gives you the advantage of observation. When you're not focused on what to say next, you become a better listener. You notice details others miss, the tone beneath the words, the unspoken emotions, the gaps in logic. This awareness gives you clarity, not just about others, but about yourself. In stillness, you hear your own thoughts more clearly, free from the noise of external influence. The Stoics practice this through contemplative silence, moments deliberately set aside to reflect on their thoughts, actions, and the nature of life itself. They understood that constant chatter, whether external or internal, distracts from deep thinking. In silence, you confront your mind without distraction. It's in these quiet moments that insights emerge, decisions become clearer, and self-awareness deepens. Another dimension of stillness is emotional regulation. Silence allows space between emotion and reaction. When anger rises, silence acts as a buffer, preventing impulsive words that can't be taken back. It's not suppression, it's self-control. By choosing not to speak in the heat of emotion, you give yourself time to cool down, process, and respond thoughtfully if needed. Silence also carries an undeniable authority. Think of the most impactful leaders or thinkers, not the ones who spoke the most, but the ones who spoke when it mattered. Their words had weight because they were rare and deliberate. The absence of constant talking made their presence more powerful. The Stoics believed in this economy of words. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively, not to broadcast his thoughts to the world, but as private reflections. His wisdom wasn't in loud declarations, but in the quiet strength of his introspection. In relationships, the strength of stillness can be transformative. Not every disagreement needs to be resolved through argument. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response. This isn't about silent treatment, which is a form of manipulation. It's about peaceful detachment, choosing not to engage in dynamics that drain your energy or compromise your peace. Silence also fosters resilience. When you don't rely on external validation, you become emotionally self-sufficient. You don't need to voice every thought or feeling to feel heard, because your own acknowledgement is enough. This inner stillness creates a sense of stability that isn't shaken by external chaos. Another critical aspect is that silence often reveals truth. In the absence of words, you can't hide behind explanations, justifications, or distractions. What's real surfaces. This applies both internally and externally. Within yourself, silence strips away the mental clutter, exposing what truly matters. In interactions with others, silence often prompts reflection, forcing people to sit with their own thoughts, sometimes leading to deeper understanding without a single word exchanged. Stillness also aligns with the natural rhythm of life. Nature doesn't rush. The most profound transformations, like the growth of a tree or the shaping of mountains, happen in silence and time. The Stoics observed nature to learn about themselves. They understood that growth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Often it's quiet, gradual, and unseen until the results are undeniable. Silence can also be an act of defiance. In situations where speaking would mean compromising your values, silence is a powerful stand. It says, "I don't need to prove anything to you." This kind of silence is unshakable because it's rooted in conviction. It's the strength to hold your ground without the need for external validation. Practicing stillness also enhances your decision-making. When faced with choices, the pressure to decide quickly often leads to mistakes. Silence gives you space to weigh options, consider consequences, and listen to your intuition. The Stoics valued deliberation, believing that wise decisions come from calm, clear thinking, not rushed reactions. Moreover, silence cultivates humility. It's an acknowledgement that you don't have all the answers, and that's okay. Speaking less doesn't mean you know less. It often means you're wise enough to listen more. The Stoics believed that wisdom begins with the recognition of your own ignorance. In silence, you become a student of life, open to learning from every experience. Stillness is also a sanctuary. In a world that constantly demands attention, silence is where you retreat to recharge. It's not about isolation, but about creating moments of peace amidst the noise. The Stoics didn't seek silence because they disliked the world. They sought it to understand the world and themselves better. There's also a connection between silence and presence. When you're silent, you're more attuned to the present moment. You notice the details, a breeze on your skin, the rhythm of your breath, the subtleties of someone's expression. This heightened awareness deepens your experience of life, grounding you in the now. Silence can also be a gift to others. In conversations, offering your full presence without the urge to fill every pause can be deeply comforting. Sometimes people don't need advice, they just need space to be heard. Your silent attention can create that space, fostering connection without the need for constant words. Furthermore, silence teaches patience. In stillness, you learn to sit with discomfort instead of rushing to escape it through distraction. This builds emotional endurance. You realize that not every feeling requires immediate action. Some emotions just need to be observed, understood, and allowed to pass naturally. The practice of silence also helps in managing stress. When life feels overwhelming, stepping back into stillness can reset your nervous system. Even a few minutes of quiet reflection can shift your perspective, reducing anxiety and restoring a sense of control. Silence isn't about the absence of communication. In fact, it often enhances it. When you do speak after a period of thoughtful silence, your words carry more weight because they come from a place of clarity, not reaction. This is the essence of Stoic wisdom, speaking less but saying more. Stillness also sharpens your intuition. In the absence of external noise, you can hear your inner voice more clearly. This isn't mystical, it's psychological. Your mind needs quiet to process information, connect ideas, and generate insights. Some of the most creative breakthroughs happen not in moments of frantic activity, but in quiet reflection. In conflict, silence can be a form of leadership. When emotions run high, the person who remains calm and silent often holds the most influence. Their stillness becomes a stabilizing force, creating space for others to de-escalate and reflect. This kind of leadership doesn't rely on authority or dominance, but on the quiet power of presence. The strength of stillness also lies in its universality. It transcends language, culture, and circumstance. A silent moment of respect, a pause before a significant event, or a shared silence between friends. These experiences connect us on a fundamental human level beyond words. Practicing stillness isn't about becoming distant or detached from life. It's about engaging with life more fully because you're not distracted by unnecessary noise. It's about finding the courage to be with yourself, to face your thoughts without the need for constant distraction. In essence, Stoic silence is a form of mastery. It's the discipline to hold back when speaking isn't necessary, the courage to face discomfort without flinching, and the wisdom to know when stillness speaks louder than words. It's a practice, a refuge, and a source of strength. And in a world that often equates noise with importance, choosing silence is a revolutionary act of self-possession. When you understand the strength of stillness, it naturally leads to another profound realization. Sometimes the loudest statements are made without words. The power of silence isn't just about withholding speech. It's about letting your actions do the talking. This is where the Stoic approach to silent boundaries comes into play. Boundaries aren't always lines you draw with firm declarations or lengthy explanations. Often, the most effective boundaries are invisible yet undeniable, defined by how you behave, not what you say. Actions speak, words merely echo. Silent boundaries are a reflection of self-respect. They are the unspoken signals you send to the world about what you will and will not accept. Unlike verbal confrontations that can lead to conflict or misunderstanding, silent boundaries operate quietly but effectively. They don't rely on others' agreement or acknowledgement. Their power comes from consistency and clarity in your behavior. The first principle of silent boundaries is understanding that you don't owe anyone an explanation for living according to your values. The Stoics believed that your life should be governed by reason and virtue, not by the need to please others. When you make decisions aligned with your principles, you don't need to justify them. Your actions will naturally reflect your priorities. If someone crosses a line, you don't have to argue or defend your stance. You simply adjust your behavior. Distance replaces confrontation, and silence replaces debate. Silent boundaries are rooted in self-awareness. You have to know what matters to you, what drains you, and what nourishes your well-being. Once you're clear on these, enforcing boundaries becomes less about reacting to others and more about honoring yourself. For example, if someone repeatedly disrespects your time, you don't need to lecture them about it. You just stop making yourself available in the same way. Your absence becomes the boundary. Another key aspect is consistency. Silent boundaries lose their power when they're inconsistent. If you set a boundary through your actions, but then waver under pressure, it sends mixed signals. The Stoic approach is about integrity. Your actions align with your values, regardless of external circumstances. This doesn't mean rigidity, but rather a steady commitment to what you know is right for you. Silent boundaries are particularly effective because they shift the focus from controlling others' behavior to managing your own. You can't control how people treat you, but you can control how you respond. This shift is empowering. It removes the frustration of trying to change others and replaces it with the calm authority of self-governance. If someone speaks to you disrespectfully, you don't need to match their tone. You simply disengage, showing through your actions that such behavior doesn't deserve your energy. Another strength of silent boundaries is that they reduce drama. Verbal confrontations often escalate, fueled by emotion and ego. But when you set a boundary quietly, through changes in your availability, engagement, or attention, there's less room for conflict. The absence of reaction speaks for itself. People notice when you withdraw your energy without explanation. It forces them to reflect on their own behavior, often more effectively than any argument could. Silent boundaries are also a form of emotional protection. They create space between you and negativity without the emotional labor of constant explanation. This doesn't mean shutting people out coldly. It means choosing where and how you invest your emotional resources. If a relationship feels draining, you might not need a dramatic exit speech. Gradually reducing your involvement sends a clear message without unnecessary confrontation. The Stoics believed in the power of example. They didn't preach their values, they lived them. This principle applies to boundaries as well. When you live with self-respect and integrity, you naturally set an example. Others learn how to treat you based on how you treat yourself. If you consistently honor your own time, energy, and values, people around you adjust accordingly, or they drift away, which is often a sign the boundary was needed. One of the most challenging aspects of silent boundaries is dealing with guilt. Society often conditions us to believe that saying no or withdrawing from toxic dynamics is selfish. But the Stoics taught that virtue includes self-care. You can't pour from an empty cup. Protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's necessary. And when you do it quietly without hostility, you maintain both your integrity and your peace. Another key is detachment from others' reactions. When you set a silent boundary, not everyone will respond positively. Some may push back, test your limits, or try to provoke a reaction. This is where Stoic discipline comes in. You're not responsible for managing others' feelings about your boundaries. Your role is to uphold them with quiet strength, regardless of how others react. Non-engagement is a powerful form of boundary setting. Sometimes the best response is no response at all. This isn't about passive aggressiveness. It's about recognizing when a situation doesn't deserve your attention. If someone thrives on conflict or drama, engaging only feeds the cycle. Silence, in this case, isn't avoidance. It's a conscious choice to rise above. Silent boundaries also work in professional settings. In workplaces where politics and power dynamics often complicate direct communication, behavior speaks volumes. Consistently showing up on time, maintaining professionalism, and not engaging in gossip sets a standard without the need for speeches. People learn what to expect from you based on what you consistently deliver. Practicing silent boundaries also teaches emotional resilience. The initial discomfort of not explaining yourself fades over time, replaced by a quiet confidence. You realize that you don't need external validation to stand firm in your decisions. This self-assurance grows with each boundary you set and maintain, creating a cycle of inner strength. Another important element is energy conservation. Arguing, explaining, and defending your choices drains mental and emotional energy. Silent boundaries eliminate this drain. They allow you to maintain your focus on what truly matters without being pulled into unnecessary debates. This energy can be redirected towards personal growth, relationships that uplift you, and pursuits that align with your values. Silent boundaries also foster healthier relationships. They create an environment where respect is mutual, not negotiated. When you model self-respect through your actions, you attract people who recognize and honor that. Relationships based on mutual understanding, rather than constant boundary enforcement, are more fulfilling and less draining. In situations where verbal boundaries are necessary, silent reinforcement strengthens them. For example, if you've communicated a boundary clearly and someone continues to test it, your consistent actions, like disengaging, limiting contact, or not responding, reinforce your words. Over time, this consistency sends a stronger message than any repeated explanation could. Self-reflection is essential in this process. Regularly ask yourself, are my actions reflecting my values? Am I maintaining boundaries that protect my peace? This practice ensures that your boundaries evolve with you. As you grow, your needs and priorities may change, and your boundaries should reflect that growth. Silent boundaries also challenge the belief that closure requires conversation. Sometimes, closure comes not from a final discussion, but from the decision to move on without one. This isn't about avoiding difficult conversations, but recognizing when they're unnecessary. You don't need to rehash every detail to find peace. Sometimes, peace comes from acceptance and quiet release. Another strength of silent boundaries is that they often reduce the likelihood of manipulation. When you don't engage emotionally, it's harder for others to pull you into guilt trips, gaslighting, or other control tactics. Your steady, consistent behavior becomes a shield against emotional manipulation. Practicing silent boundaries also deepens your self-trust. Each time you uphold a boundary without external validation, you reinforce your belief in your own judgment. This self-reliance is empowering. It shifts your focus from seeking approval to honoring your inner compass. In relationships where open communication is possible and healthy, silent boundaries still have value. They complement verbal boundaries, reinforcing them through consistent action. Words set expectations, actions confirm them. Together they create a clear, respectful dynamic. Stoic, silent boundaries are also about minimalism, not just in material possessions, but in emotional investments. You learn to carry only what's necessary, releasing the weight of constant explanations, justifications, and emotional entanglements. This simplicity brings clarity, focus, and peace. In moments of conflict, silent boundaries allow you to pause and respond thoughtfully, rather than react impulsively. This pause can de-escalate tension, providing space for both parties to reflect. It's not about avoiding conflict, but approaching it with clarity and calm. Silent boundaries also create room for personal growth. By stepping back from situations that drain you, you create space to invest in what uplifts you. This shift in focus fosters a growth mindset, where your energy is directed towards learning, evolving, and thriving. The Stoic approach to silent boundaries isn't about building walls. It's about defining your space with clarity and grace. It's about living in alignment with your values, protecting your peace without the need for constant explanation, and recognizing that actions often speak louder than words. Silent boundaries aren't about others. They're about you, your growth, and your commitment to living authentically. And in that quiet, steadfast commitment, there's a strength louder than any words could ever be. When you grasp the power of silent boundaries, you realize something even more profound. True strength isn't always in what you resist or what you protect. Sometimes it's in what you simply choose not to engage with at all. This isn't about ignoring problems or pretending things don't matter. It's about mastering the art of deliberate indifference, a conscious, purposeful decision to disengage from what doesn't serve your growth, peace, or values. The Stoic doesn't engage in every argument, every insult, or every distraction, because not everything deserves attention. In fact, the very act of engaging often gives power to things that should have none. Deliberate indifference isn't coldness or apathy in the way most people think of it. It's not about being numb or disconnected from life. Rather, it's about emotional clarity. It's the ability to distinguish between what's truly worth your energy and what's just noise. The Stoics mastered this by focusing only on what was within their control: thoughts, actions, and responses. Everything else, from other people's opinions to uncontrollable events, was met with strategic detachment. One of the first lessons in mastering deliberate indifference is understanding that not every battle is worth fighting. There's an illusion that reacting somehow validates our importance, that our anger or frustration proves we care. But the Stoics knew that reacting doesn't always equate to strength. In fact, it often reveals weakness, an inability to control one's emotions. True power lies in restraint. When you choose not to engage, you're not surrendering. You're asserting control over yourself. Consider how often people get drawn into conflicts that drain their energy with no meaningful outcome. Arguments on social media, petty workplace dramas, the need to correct every misunderstanding. These are emotional traps. The Stoic response isn't to suppress frustration, but to question it. Does this matter in the grand scheme of my life? Will engaging in this make me a better person or just feed my ego? When the answer is no, deliberate indifference becomes the wiser path. Another key to this practice is recognizing the difference between reaction and response. A reaction is impulsive, often driven by emotion. A response is thoughtful, intentional, and sometimes silent. Deliberate indifference doesn't mean you ignore problems that genuinely require attention. It means you respond to them with clarity, not emotional chaos. It's the discipline to pause, assess, and decide whether something deserves your mental and emotional bandwidth. The Stoics also understood that indifference isn't about the absence of emotion. It's about emotional sovereignty. Life will trigger feelings, anger, sadness, frustration, but those feelings don't have to dictate your behavior. Deliberate indifference is the space between stimulus and response, where you choose your next move based on reason, not impulse. It's like being the calm eye in the center of a storm, aware of the chaos but unaffected by it. A critical aspect of deliberate indifference is detachment from outcomes. Often we become overly invested in things we can't control because we're attached to a specific result. Whether it's how others perceive us, the success of a project, or even personal relationships, this attachment breeds anxiety and frustration. The Stoic approach is to focus on effort, not outcome. You do your part with excellence, then release the rest. This mindset frees you from the emotional roller coaster of highs and lows tied to external results. Deliberate indifference also applies to handling criticism and praise. Both can be traps if you rely on them to define your self-worth. The Stoics believed that neither the applause nor the boos of the crowd should sway your sense of self. What matters is your own integrity and alignment with your values. When someone criticizes you unfairly, the urge to defend or retaliate is natural. But deliberate indifference asks, does this person's opinion change who I am? If not, their words lose power. Another layer of this practice is recognizing when silence itself is a form of engagement. Sometimes we claim to be indifferent, yet we're mentally replaying conversations, holding grudges, or silently resenting. True indifference isn't passive-aggressive silence. It's emotional neutrality. It's genuinely not being affected, not because you're suppressing feelings, but because you've processed and released them. Deliberate indifference also protects you from emotional manipulation. People often provoke reactions to gain control, to make you feel guilty, angry, or defensive. When you don't react as expected, you disrupt that dynamic. This isn't about being emotionally unavailable, but about refusing to be a puppet to others' triggers. Your calm becomes your shield. It's important to note that deliberate indifference isn't a dismissal of empathy. The Stoics weren't indifferent to human suffering. They practiced compassion, but with boundaries. They helped where they could, but they didn't carry the emotional burden of things beyond their control. This balance allowed them to act from a place of wisdom, not overwhelm. One practical way to cultivate this mindset is through perspective shifting. When something upsets you, zoom out. Will this matter in a month, a year? In the context of your entire life, is this situation significant? This exercise often reveals how much we magnify trivial issues. What feels urgent now might be inconsequential with time. Recognizing this helps you release unnecessary attachments. Another tool is the practice of amor fati, loving one's fate. This Stoic concept isn't about passive acceptance, but about embracing life's events, even the unpleasant ones, as opportunities for growth. When you adopt this mindset, you stop resisting what you can't change. You don't waste energy fighting reality. Instead, you redirect that energy toward adapting, learning, and evolving. Deliberate indifference also fosters resilience. When you're not emotionally entangled in every setback, you recover faster. You don't get stuck in rumination or self-pity. Challenges become data points, not defining moments. This detachment doesn't make you careless. It makes you adaptable. You face life with equanimity, unshaken by success or failure, because your worth isn't tied to external circumstances. Another important aspect is the clarity that comes from not reacting impulsively. When you don't rush to respond, you give yourself time to observe, reflect, and understand situations more deeply. This pause often reveals that what seemed urgent or offensive wasn't worth your energy after all. It's in this stillness that wisdom emerges. Deliberate indifference also cultivates freedom. When you're not constantly reacting to external stimuli, you reclaim your time, focus, and emotional space. You live on your terms, guided by your values, not by the demands or judgments of others. This autonomy is at the heart of Stoic philosophy, the idea that true freedom is internal, unaffected by external conditions. In relationships, deliberate indifference can create healthier dynamics. It prevents codependency, where your emotional state is tied to someone else's behavior. Instead of trying to control or fix others, you allow them to be responsible for themselves while you maintain your own emotional boundaries. This doesn't mean being distant or uncaring. It means loving without attachment, supporting without overextending. The practice also helps in managing expectations. Much of our frustration comes from expecting people or situations to meet our ideals. When reality falls short, we react with disappointment or anger. Deliberate indifference shifts this perspective. You accept people as they are, not as you wish them to be. This acceptance reduces conflict and fosters inner peace. Another benefit is the reduction of anxiety. Anxiety often stems from overthinking and the fear of what might happen. Deliberate indifference interrupts this cycle. By focusing only on what you can control and releasing the rest, you lighten your mental load. You stop catastrophizing and start living in the present, grounded and calm. Mindfulness practices can support this mindset. Being present helps you observe your thoughts without being swept away by them. You notice triggers without immediate reaction. This awareness creates space for deliberate indifference to grow, a gap between feeling and action where choice resides. Deliberate indifference also aligns with the concept of simplicity. When you stop engaging with every distraction, drama, or demand, life becomes more straightforward. You focus on what truly matters, cutting through the noise. This simplicity isn't about doing less. It's about doing what's essential with clarity and purpose. Another layer of this practice is self-compassion. Sometimes the hardest battles are internal. We engage in self-criticism, regret, or perfectionism. Deliberate indifference applies here too. It's the choice to stop fighting with yourself, to release the need for constant self-evaluation. You accept your flaws without letting them define you. This doesn't mean complacency, but a kinder, more balanced self-awareness. In decision-making, deliberate indifference helps you avoid overthinking. You gather information, consider your options, and then let go of the need for perfect outcomes. This approach reduces decision fatigue and increases confidence because you trust your ability to adapt, no matter the result. The Stoic doesn't engage in every emotional impulse because they understand the cost. Every reaction is an expenditure of energy. Deliberate indifference is the budget, ensuring that energy is spent wisely. It's not about avoiding life's challenges, but meeting them with a steady mind, free from unnecessary turbulence. In the end, deliberate indifference isn't about caring less. It's about caring wisely. It's the art of focusing your attention and emotions where they have the most impact, on your growth, your peace, and your purpose. The Stoic doesn't engage because they know that sometimes the most powerful response is none at all. And in that space of non-engagement, true freedom is found. When you fully embrace the art of deliberate indifference, you realize there's an even more powerful tool at your disposal, one that doesn't require you to raise your voice, argue, or defend yourself. That tool is silence. But not just any silence. Intentional, purposeful silence that acts as both a shield and a sword in the face of chaos and conflict. It's easy to underestimate silence in a world obsessed with noise and reaction. Yet, in the hands of someone disciplined in Stoic principles, silence becomes a weapon more effective than words, cutting through confusion, disarming opponents, and protecting inner peace. Silence, when wielded correctly, is not passive. It's an active choice, a conscious refusal to be dragged into emotional turmoil. It's not the silence of weakness, but the silence of strength, a strategy rooted in self-control and clarity. The Stoics didn't view silence as a retreat, but as a position of power, a deliberate stand that says, "I control what enters and leaves my mind." In the face of provocation, where most people react impulsively, the Stoic remains still, not because they have nothing to say, but because not everything deserves a response. One of the most striking powers of silence in conflict is its ability to disrupt expectations. People often provoke to elicit reactions. They thrive on the emotional feedback loop created when someone takes the bait. Anger feeds anger, and conflict escalates. But when you respond with silence, you break that loop. It creates discomfort not for you, but for the person expecting a reaction. They're left to sit with their own words, forced to reflect in the absence of the emotional chaos they sought to stir. Silence also buys you time to process, reflect, and choose your next move with wisdom rather than impulse. In the heat of conflict, emotions cloud judgment. Words spoken in anger can't be taken back, and reactions driven by ego often make situations worse. But silence acts as a buffer, creating space between stimulus and response. It allows you to observe not just the external situation, but your internal state, ensuring that when you do speak, your words are intentional and effective. Another powerful aspect of silence is its role in maintaining dignity. Engaging in petty arguments or emotional outbursts often diminishes your authority and self-respect. But silence, especially when rooted in self-assurance, exudes confidence. It shows that you're not easily shaken, that your sense of self isn't dependent on winning debates or proving points. This quiet strength often commands more respect than any loud declaration ever could. Silence also shifts the focus from reaction to observation. When you're not preoccupied with defending yourself, you become acutely aware of what's happening around you. You notice patterns, motives, and dynamics that others miss in the heat of argument. This heightened awareness gives you a strategic advantage, allowing you to navigate conflict with insight rather than emotion. In chaotic environments, silence becomes an anchor. When everything feels out of control, the ability to remain silent, to hold space without being swept away by the noise, is a form of mastery. It's the difference between being the storm and being the stillness at its center. The Stoics believed that external chaos is inevitable, but internal chaos is optional. Silence is the tool that helps maintain that internal calm, even when the world around you is in turmoil. Silence also forces people to confront their own discomfort. Many find silence unbearable because it strips away distractions and exposes raw emotions. In conversations, silence can compel others to fill the void, often revealing more than they intended. This isn't about manipulation, but about understanding the psychological power of presence. Sometimes saying nothing speaks volumes, creating a space where truth emerges more clearly than it ever could through confrontation. Another function of silence is boundary setting. Without uttering a word, you can establish limits simply by disengaging. When someone crosses a line, you don't always need to explain why it's unacceptable. Your withdrawal of attention, your refusal to participate, sends a clear message. This doesn't deserve my energy. This non-verbal boundary is often more respected than verbal ones because it's demonstrated through action, not just intention. Silence also protects your mental clarity. Words have weight, and once spoken, they shape not just how others perceive you, but how you perceive yourself. In conflict, people often say things they don't mean, driven by the heat of the moment. Silence eliminates that risk. It ensures that when you do speak, your words are aligned with your values and not just emotional reactions. In relationships, silence can be both a teacher and a healer. It teaches patience, the art of listening not just to respond, but to understand. It heals by providing space for emotions to settle, for perspectives to shift, without the pressure of immediate resolution. This isn't the silent treatment, which is punitive and manipulative. Stoic silence is respectful, intentional, and rooted in self-awareness. Silence also fosters resilience. When you're not constantly reacting, you build emotional strength. You realize that you can withstand discomfort without the need to alleviate it through words. This resilience isn't about suppressing emotions, but about managing them with grace. It's the ability to sit with difficult feelings without letting them dictate your behavior. Moreover, silence can be a form of protest. Throughout history, silent resistance has often been more powerful than vocal opposition. It's a refusal to participate in systems or dynamics that contradict one's principles. In this way, silence isn't passive. It's an active stance, a way of saying, I won't give this my voice, my energy, or my validation. Silence also nurtures self-reflection. In the absence of external noise, you confront your own thoughts. This can be uncomfortable, but it's where growth happens. The Stoics valued solitude and silence because they knew that wisdom isn't found in constant distraction. It's uncovered in quiet moments of introspection, where you can hear the faint whispers of your own truth. Another dimension of silence is its role in negotiation and persuasion. Sometimes, the most effective way to influence is to say nothing. Silence creates a pause, a gap that others feel compelled to fill. This can shift the power dynamic, giving you the upper hand without the need for aggressive tactics. It's a subtle form of control, grounded not in domination, but in composure. In personal development, practicing silence sharpens focus. It trains your mind to be present, to observe without judgment, and to respond with intention. This mindfulness reduces stress, enhances clarity, and fosters a deeper connection with both yourself and others. Silence also teaches acceptance. Not everything needs to be fixed, explained, or resolved through dialogue. Some things are better left unspoken, either because words can't capture their depth or because speaking would only complicate what is simple. Acceptance through silence isn't resignation, it's recognition. It's acknowledging reality without the need to reshape it with explanations. In leadership, silence can be a powerful tool. A leader who speaks less but with purpose commands more attention than one who talks incessantly. Silence, used wisely, creates an aura of thoughtfulness and authority. It suggests that when you do speak, it's because you have something meaningful to say. Silence also cultivates humility. It's an acknowledgement that you don't have all the answers, and that sometimes the best response is to listen, observe, and learn. This humility isn't self-deprecating. It's rooted in the confidence to admit that wisdom often grows in the fertile ground of quiet contemplation. Practicing silence in everyday life can start small. It's in the pause before responding to a triggering comment. It's in choosing not to reply to a message immediately, but giving yourself space to reflect. It's in moments of solitude, where you sit without distractions and simply be. These small acts of silence accumulate, gradually strengthening your ability to remain composed under pressure. Silence also enhances gratitude. In quiet moments, you become more attuned to the subtle details of life, the warmth of sunlight, the rhythm of your breath, the beauty in simplicity. This awareness fosters appreciation, grounding you in the present moment. In conflict resolution, silence can de-escalate tension. When emotions run high, words often inflame rather than soothe. Silence, however, creates space for emotions to settle. It signals that you're not interested in winning an argument, but in maintaining peace. This doesn't mean avoiding difficult conversations, but approaching them with calmness and thoughtfulness. Silence can also be restorative. In a world that bombards us with constant stimulation, intentional silence is a form of self-care. It's a way to recharge, to disconnect from external demands, and reconnect with your inner self. This restoration isn't just mental, it's emotional and even physical, as silence has been shown to reduce stress and promote well-being. Silence is a reminder of impermanence. In the stillness, you become aware of life's fleeting nature, not in a morbid sense, but in a way that deepens your appreciation for each moment. This awareness fosters a sense of urgency, not to fill life with noise, but to fill it with meaning. Silence, when practiced as the Stoics did, is not emptiness. It's a space rich with awareness, power, and purpose. It's the ultimate response to chaos and conflict, not because it ignores reality, but because it transcends it. In silence, you find clarity. In clarity, you find strength. And in that strength, you discover a peace that no external force can shake. After exploring how silence can be a powerful response to chaos and conflict, there's an even deeper realization that emerges. The ultimate strength isn't just in what you don't say or how you don't react. It's in how completely unbothered you can be without needing to prove it to anyone. This isn't about putting on a show of indifference or pretending you don't care. It's about genuinely not being affected, without the need for validation, explanations, or dramatic exits. That's the ultimate Stoic flex, being unshaken in a world that's constantly trying to pull you into its storms. True composure doesn't announce itself. It's not loud, it doesn't seek attention, and it doesn't come with a checklist of achievements to display. It's subtle, often invisible, but unmistakably powerful. It's the quiet confidence of someone who knows who they are, what they stand for, and what deserves their energy. The Stoics didn't seek to impress others with how calm they were. They simply lived in alignment with their principles, and that authenticity spoke for itself. Being unbothered without needing to prove it starts with self-mastery. It's about knowing that your peace doesn't rely on external circumstances. You're not unbothered because life is easy or because people are always kind. You're unbothered because you've trained your mind to stay rooted, no matter what happens around you. It's a mindset, not a reaction. This kind of resilience comes from within, cultivated through daily habits, reflections, and a deep understanding of what truly matters. One key element is detachment from external validation. The need to prove yourself often comes from seeking approval, wanting others to recognize your strength, wisdom, or success. But the moment you crave that recognition, your peace becomes dependent on others' opinions. The Stoic flex is realizing that you don't need applause to feel worthy. Your self-worth is intrinsic, not contingent on external feedback. Whether praised or criticized, you remain the same, anchored in your values. Another crucial aspect is emotional economy, choosing where to invest your energy and where to let go. Life constantly offers invitations to be offended, outraged, or reactive, but not every invitation requires an RSVP. The ultimate Stoic flex is declining those invitations without making a big show of it. You don't need to explain why you're not engaging. Your lack of reaction is the message. This doesn't deserve my attention. This isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending to be unaffected. It's about processing emotions internally, understanding them, and then deciding whether they're worth external expression. For the Stoic, feelings are natural, but reactions are a choice. You might feel frustrated, but you don't have to act on it. You might feel disrespected, but you don't have to defend yourself to people who aren't capable of understanding your worth. The ultimate flex is not needing to be understood by everyone. When you're secure in who you are, you stop trying to convince others of your value. Some people will misunderstand you, misjudge you, or project their insecurities onto you. Let them. Their perception isn't your responsibility. The Stoics taught that what others think is outside your control, and therefore not worth your concern. Your focus is on living with integrity, not on managing others' narratives. This mindset extends to success and failure. Being unbothered doesn't mean you're indifferent to outcomes, but that you're not defined by them. Whether you win or lose, succeed or stumble, your core remains intact. You don't need to broadcast your achievements to feel accomplished, nor do you crumble under criticism. Your sense of self is stable because it's built on internal principles, not external results. Another powerful aspect of this is the art of non-comparison. Much of modern anxiety comes from comparing ourselves to others, who's more successful, happier, richer, more admired. The ultimate Stoic flex is not caring where you stand in comparison to anyone else because you're not running their race. Your path is your own, measured by your growth, your values, and your peace of mind. The only person you're competing with is who you were yesterday. This level of unbothered composure also comes from embracing impermanence. The Stoics constantly reflected on the transient nature of life, relationships, possessions, status, even life itself. When you deeply understand that nothing lasts forever, you stop clinging. You appreciate what you have without fear of losing it because your identity isn't tied to external things. You're grateful, not attached. And when things change, as they always do, you adapt without unnecessary suffering. The ultimate flex also lies in controlling your reactions, not situations. You can't control how people behave, but you can control how you respond. And often the strongest response is no response at all. Not because you're ignoring the issue, but because you've decided it's not worthy of disturbing your peace. This isn't avoidance, it's selective engagement. You engage where it matters, where it aligns with your values, and you let the rest pass like clouds in the sky. Another dimension of this mindset is the freedom that comes with self-sufficiency. When you're emotionally independent, you're not easily manipulated. People can't guilt-trip you, shame you, or provoke you because your inner compass isn't swayed by external tactics. You know who you are, and that self-knowledge is a fortress. The Stoics believed that true freedom isn't political or physical. It's the freedom of the mind from unnecessary desires and attachments. Being unbothered also means embracing simplicity. The more you complicate your life with unnecessary drama, possessions, or obligations, the more vulnerable you become to stress. The Stoic way is to strip away what's unnecessary, focusing on what truly matters. This simplicity isn't just external, it's mental. Fewer attachments, fewer expectations, fewer emotional debts, just clarity, purpose, and peace. One of the most underrated aspects of this is the joy that comes from it. People often think of Stoicism as cold or emotionless, but it's the opposite. When you're not constantly reacting, comparing, or seeking validation, you create space for genuine joy. You appreciate the small things, a quiet morning, meaningful conversations, the feeling of being alive. Joy that doesn't rely on circumstances is the ultimate freedom. This mindset also transforms how you handle adversity. Life will challenge you, people will disappoint you, things will go wrong. But when you're unbothered, not because you're detached from life, but because you've accepted its nature, you face these moments with resilience. You don't crumble under pressure. You rise, not with grand gestures, but with steady, quiet strength. In relationships, this mindset fosters healthier dynamics. You're not needy, clingy, or controlling because your sense of self isn't tied to another person's behavior. You love freely without trying to possess. You support without trying to fix. And when relationships no longer serve your well-being, you walk away, not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. Another critical element is the ability to find peace in solitude. Many people fear being alone because they equate it with loneliness. But when you're unbothered, solitude becomes a sanctuary, not a punishment. You enjoy your own company because you're not constantly seeking external distractions to avoid facing yourself. This self-acceptance is rare and powerful. Being unbothered also means not over-explaining yourself. When you're secure in your decisions, you don't feel the need to justify them to everyone. You're polite, respectful, but firm. You say no without guilt. You set boundaries without drama. And you let people think whatever they want, because their opinions don't change your reality. This mindset also teaches you to let go quickly. Holding on to grudges, regrets, or past mistakes weighs you down. The Stoics practiced the art of letting go, not out of indifference, but out of wisdom. They knew that clinging to what's gone only prolongs suffering. The ultimate flex is to acknowledge, learn, and release. You move forward with lessons, not baggage. In the face of provocation, the Stoic doesn't react because they don't need to prove anything. If someone insults you, what does it change? Nothing, unless you let it. Their words are a reflection of them, not you. The ultimate power is realizing that your peace isn't up for negotiation. It's yours to protect, quietly and confidently. This isn't about being unaffected by life's beauty and struggles. It's about experiencing them fully without being controlled by them. You feel deeply, but you're not drowned by emotions. You care, but you're not consumed. You engage with life, but you're not enslaved by it. The ultimate Stoic flex is not about appearances. It's about substance. It's not about pretending to be above it all. It's about genuinely living above the noise, grounded in principles, free from the need to perform for others. Your life speaks for itself, not through declarations, but through quiet strength, consistent actions, and an unwavering sense of inner peace. And the beauty of it all, you don't have to convince anyone. The peace you carry is proof enough. At the heart of everything we've explored, one truth stands tall. Your peace is your power. Don't react. Cut them off. Silently wasn't just about silence for the sake of it. It was about reclaiming control over your life without the exhausting need to prove, explain, or defend. We've walked through the Stoic art of non-reaction, mastering emotional discipline, guarding your inner citadel, and understanding that silence isn't emptiness. It's strength, strategy, and self-respect woven into one. You've learned how to set boundaries without words, protect your sacred energy, detach without guilt, and disarm manipulation with indifference. You've seen how actions speak louder than arguments, how stillness can shake the ground more than noise ever could, and how the ultimate flex isn't showing you're unbothered, it's actually being unbothered. So, here's the real challenge, not just to know these lessons, but to live them. The next time life pulls you into a storm, remember, you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. Let your silence echo louder than words, and let your peace speak for itself. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What's one situation where you realized silence was your strongest response? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read them all, and your story might inspire someone else today. If you found value in this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. There's more wisdom coming your way, and you won't want to miss it. Stay strong, stay silent when it matters, and most importantly, stay true to yourself.